Good evening and welcome to the 37th meeting of fiscal year 2025 for the Milton Planning Board. At this time, I would like to now call the meeting to order and begin with the introduction of the Planning Board and our staff. Here tonight, we have with us
Cheryl Tagayas, Secretary.
Sean Fahey, member.
Meg Yoltfield, member.
Jim Davis, member.
and Meredith Hall serving as chair. We have with us on Zoom, Julia is on vacation. So Cheyenne, if you can introduce yourself.
Cheyenne Frazier, Assistant Director of Planning.
Great, thank you so much. And welcome everyone here tonight. So moving to the administrative items, we have 2 sets of minutes that came in for approval. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read those edits. They were for the 27th of March and the 7th of April.
I haven't read them yet.
You haven't, they just came in late this afternoon. Okay, so
They're very minor, if you like a couple of words.
Do you happen to have them?
yes, I do, yes. If you,
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to just,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
with those-
I'm having trouble logging into the OneDrive, but I can look up the email where I sent them.
okay.
Give me one
I
sec.
can forward it, sure. I just had one, while you're going through that, I just had one comment
I'm fine with both of those.
on the April 7th, where it says Shiloh Theron, an out-of-town real estate developer. She's actually was an agent representing them, so
That's a good catch.
not a developer. And then switch that to agent, so that's very small. And then on the March 27th, under where we were discussing parameters for a hypothetical adjacent community scenario model, which is the second to last paragraph, that should have been, Ms. Tagayas said that she believed the 10% plan was ready to submit to the public. That was final after that. You were saying that was ready. And,
Okay.
and that discussion was continued to April 7th. So instead of 25, that was 10.
Okay.
Those are the only 2 things I had.
I'm fine with those.
Okay. Fine with me.
So is there a motion, unless you want to still look for what you're
No, I found what I had sent, so that's fine. I'll make a motion to approve the March 27th and the April, wait, Sean, you were not here for one of them, so we should do them separately? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the March 27th meeting minutes as amended tonight in our meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't abstain.
Yeah,
Abstain.
I abstained
Okay.
from that one.
Great.
And then I'll make a motion to approve the April 7th minutes as amended at our meeting tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so next, the next discussion of next meeting dates. We have a meeting scheduled, which is a Wednesday, but it's the 30th following the elections. And that's just for a reorganization meeting. But we do have on that MBTA community discussion as well to follow up. So that will be included as the only real items. And then, of course, we move to town meeting the following week, which it starts with Monday the 5th, the 6th, and hopefully not further than that. But
And then do we meet on the 8th of May? Did we?
we had tentatively discussed meeting on the 8th of May, so I would maybe hold a placeholder for that if you can.
I
But-
can. I'll just be a little bit late for that one.
Okay. And on the 30th, that is fully remote. They didn't have a room for us. So just to make note that it's a fully remote meeting. Okay, and now we can go to Cheyenne for your staff update.
I do not have any current updates other than we are working on getting our Maytown meeting articles finalized up today and sent in.
Great. All right. So with that, we can move to our citizens speak. If there's anyone on Zoom or in the public which wishes to speak, you'll have an opportunity also, if something is on the agenda, to speak later on that. But if anyone would like to join us at this time, feel free. Any hands up, Cheyenne?
Yes, we have one person on Zoom, Brian.
Okay. Welcome, Brian.
evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, good evening. Brian Furs, Precinct 10, address is 630 Brush Hill Road in Milton. Thanks for taking my comments. I'm actually calling in from vacation and will not be able to be on later. So I was hoping I could quickly put a question out for the board to be answered during the scheduled MBTA discussion. I had submitted a alternative map scenario through the chair, and just was wondering if anything had been done with that. I know there's been a couple of other requests by town citizens for studies by UTL and examinations of different alternatives.
That was shared with the board, just to comment, just to let you know, Brian. We were at the time trying to narrow that corridor on Elliott Street. So we did not move forward with that plan. Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, was that an answer to me?
Yes, could you hear? It was shared with the board, but at the time we were moving forward with narrowing that Elliott Street corridor. So we did not add on additional land area.
But we didn't discuss it at a meeting.
I don't know that we ever discussed it. Yeah.
No, it was shared to us by email, but we didn't discuss it at a meeting.
Yeah, and the reason I sent the plan, and not trying to discuss this with the board, but the reason I sent the plan is because it was an attempt to narrow the Elliott Street corridor. It pulled all of the area back to just the first parcel. So
Right.
Anyway, thank you for giving me your answer.
That's great. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else on Zoom, Cheyenne?
No other hands raised.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we can now open, we've continued the public hearing for the zoning articles, the accessory dwelling units and the site plan approval. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on any of those? Those will be on the May town meeting. They've been voted and approved by the warrant committee and are in the current warrant. But if anyone has a comment on those, we're happy to do that before we close the public hearing. Any hands up, Cheyenne, on Zoom?
No hands on Zoom.
Okay. So with that, if I could have a motion to close the public hearing for both the accessory dwelling units and the site plan approval.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for both accessory dwelling units and site plan approval zoning articles.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now it is past 7:15 exactly. So we now can invite the team for the site plan approval for 2 Elliott Street to join us at the table here. Good evening and welcome back.
Good evening. Good evening. Nice to be back.
Good.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Ned Corcoran for the record, an attorney at 26 High Street, and I'm joined by J.D. Wild and Dan Kerrigan, who are the proponents of an exciting new market plan for the redevelopment of the old Bank of America building at the corner of Adams and Elliott. It really is an elegant response to the historic nature of the building and a revitalization of the area. We're going to start with a note. Yep, we got it. So we'll start with we'll call it the sizzle. Dan Kerrigan, who you know from Steel and Rye, is going to be basically the brains behind the inside of the building, and the inside of the building is really a special thing. And then JD will take over and talk about the outside process and close with questions that the board and others may have. So, thank you.
Great. Awesome.
Thank you, Ned, for the introduction. Thanks to the board for hearing us tonight. So yeah, we have the slides up here on the screen. This first slide, just to sort of reorient, we've talked about this a few months back, but the building is situated at 2 Elliott, which is facing Elliott Street on the corner of Adams and Elliott, the old Bank of America building. And this image here just sort of depicts what our vision is for bringing this building back to life. The description here, we've just sort of described out a little bit of, what our vision is for this building to bring it back. But Milton Village stands as a charming, walkable enclave nestled along the Neponset River, blending small-town warmth with urban convenience. A notable landmark, the building at 2 Elliott Street contributes to the village's character and vitality, anchoring its role as both a historic and evolving hub. But this idea of 2 Elliott Street sort of being the anchor or the hub for Milton Village is really exciting to us. Next slide. Ooh, one more. So this would just like to introduce our vision of the successful execution of this market, as well as the name. So 2 Pence Market. The old bank at 2 Elliott Street has been brought back to life with purpose and pride as 2 Pence Market. It once again serves as a cornerstone of the Milton community, as a coffee shop, a neighborhood grocery, and a daily hangout. Walk through our doors and you'll feel it immediately. Everything here is thoughtfully made and worth coming back for. Your visit feels like a discovery. Your first visit feels like a discovery. Your second like a welcome return, and every visit after that like home. At 2 Pence Market, you're not a customer, you're a neighbor. So this idea of basically building this market that meets the moment, this revitalizing this building in a way that is there for the community to serve the community, serve the needs of the community at any time of day, any day of the week. So meeting the moment is something that we've talked about quite a bit, where you're commuting to work in the morning, you can grab a coffee or a bagel. You're coming out of the gym or 60 Adams Street, you can grab a smoothie or a cold pressed juice. There's beautiful produce. There's a floral market. There's prepared meals. In the evening, we're planning to have a full ice cream operation as well, which we think will be, just one more reason to use this property and this area as a gathering place. And one of the things we've noticed is obviously it's so hectic down there in the morning. In the evening, you have all these beautiful buildings, you have the river, everything's well lit, and it's very quiet there at night. So this idea of having the trellis patio and terrace area lit up outside at night and a little ice cream operation going on is pretty exciting to us as well. Some of the branding you can see here, we're just really looking to use the building as inspiration. And, one of the things we've talked so much about is we didn't come up with this idea to build a market and then walk around looking for the building to put it in. This building, trying to figure out, as a Milton resident and owner of Steel and Rye, and JD owns these buildings down in the village, the idea was sort of looking at this building and saying, what would be the best use for the community? What would be the best, asset for the village and the people that live here? So this idea of restoring this building back and putting something into it that would really serve the community well is the idea. And that's what meeting the moment is. Next slide. This we love. We found this original sort of marketing pamphlet for Blue Hill Bank and Trust Company, which was the first occupant of the building. And the idea of utilizing this in some of our historic, some of the branding, but using some historic inspiration. This is just an example of a little cafe that's done something similar, but I think you can expect to see that building as we clean up and restore the exterior to utilize that. Next slide. I won't go too deep into every product that we're going to sell, but the idea of this being a great place to grab a bit of produce, some grass-fed beef, local pantry staples, some freshly prepared things like bagels or juices or smoothies, prepared meals, flowers, all of those things. Next slide, please. This I'd love to just do a quick 30-second walkthrough because I think this really informs how the inside of this building can be brought back to life. As the bank, obviously, just kind of a big hollow space. That the idea here which we're most excited about is reactivating that front center entrance. Such a beautiful grand entrance, and it's been sort of barricaded with wrought iron railings for as long as I can remember. So reactivating that, as you enter up through that front entryway, there would be floral filling the outside vestibule and inside, produce straight ahead. And as you walk left around that center island of produce display, you see a small seating area with a few tables and a few chairs surrounding the existing fireplace. Continuing past that would be the counter service area. We could order a coffee or a juice or a bagel. There'll be some cold cases there with prepared meals, pre-built salads with proteins and things like that for lunch items. Behind that counter is the existing vault area, and that area is where we're proposing a little miniature wine, spirits, and beer section to the market, kind of tucked away, but not a hugely extensive selection, but just a very specific selection. Local beers, a small selection of spirits that we think are really well made, handcrafted things, and then a nice selection of wines, things that pair nicely with prepared meals, but also serve as a simple way to run in and grab a gift for dinner at your neighbor's house or something like that. And then finally, as you to the right side of the screen, you'll see a counter area. We're planning for a mini ice cream parlor to operate out of that section, and then a few registers by the second door, and probably a flow where the majority of the traffic will flow in through the center and out through that right side. So a nice circular pattern inside. Next slide, please. I think the next few slides just sort of walk through our vision for what most of the products will be, so we don't have to spend too much time on that, but floral. Next slide. Definitely fresh produce. We work at Steel and Rye with lots of local farms, so whenever possible and in season, we'll be using local New England farms. Next slide. Definitely prepackaged foods, cold storage, fresh beverages, things like that. Next slide. Pantry staples. Next slide. And of course, wine, spirits, and beer. And next slide. This is an area to the right side of the building where there is already an existing window. We're imagining opening that up for a pickup section. So if you order products inside, you're able to pick them up out there, which would be adjacent to the terrace area. Next slide, please. And I think that's pretty much it for the food and beverage portion of it, and just sort of our vision for what the market will be in the community. Head over to JD.
You guys mind
Great.
if I stand up towards the screen?
No, just, take the microphone with you, yeah.
Easier for me.
There. Great.
So what you're looking at in this current slide is the existing conditions. And what I want to do is I want to direct your attention to the perimeter of the building. It's pretty bare and kind of vacant right now. It's really got no life to it. So like I presented in the last time, and our goal for this presentation is to really display kind of how we're intending to activate it. Next slide, please. So this is the existing conditions front of the building. And I think this picture does a really good job kind of showing the condition of the bank. It feels cold, feels unapproachable, it feels empty, it feels like it's been vacant for decades. So our goal, like Dan said, is to activate this front staircase here and really kind of make this pop. So when you're standing at that intersection, the first thing you see when you come to Milton Village is this building, and it sets the tone for the rest of the village. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of slides is lay out specifically how we intend to activate this exterior space. I'm going to start with the front facade, and then we're going to work our way to the left pergola, and then we'll work our way to this corner. I think it's easiest to break it down in those three sections. Next slide, please. So this is a rendering of what we're proposing for the exterior to start to look like. The things I want to point out are we're going to bring in new doors, which I'll lay out on the next slide. That was very important to us. Right now, they're aluminum storefront doors. Again, it feels very cold, feels very much like a bank. We want to activate those doors, similar to Steel and Rye, how that has that really grand kind of front entrance. We are proposing to paint the existing windows black, leave the trim white, leave all the trim white. With everything being white, it just feels a little dated. It needs a little bit of dichotomy and distinction between the trim and the windows. We are proposing to add this pergola, which I'll cover in a separate slide. But for the purpose of this, I just really want to draw your attention to what we're going to do to activate this front. And if you go to the next slide, please. So this is our inspiration for the doors. This is really what we're targeting right here. Each of these different images kind of pulls a different feature, but I have an artist who does hand stencil gold lettering similar to this, like you see in Back Bay. Open glass, there'll be black doors. The door at the side and the door at the front will match. But again, the goal is to make it feel like a much higher end establishment, a much warmer, much more welcoming approach. Next slide, please. So the next area I'm going to kind of walk you through is this patio area. Next slide, please. So this is the existing conditions. Again, it feels almost awkward. It almost feels like it's like an awkward piece of public land that's just kind of sitting out there by itself. So our goal is to activate it. This is the takeout window that Dan was just talking about. It's an existing window. We are going to widen it a little bit, and the goal there, one of the things I've talked to Dan a lot about is as a consumer going into Steel and Rye, it's hard to get in and get out of there, and especially when there's a backed up line for the bakery. So the goal will be to be efficient in how people flow through this space. So if there's Uber Eats or if there's somebody who's sitting on the patio waiting for their order, they don't have to sit inside and they don't have to bottleneck the whole operation. They can come sit outside. Next slide, please. So this is what we're proposing. Again, if you notice, this is a service window now. If you notice, this is a newer door. It's not the aluminum storefront. We've added some really attractive sconces at the entrances. And then this is a pergola structure that will span over the existing grass area. We brought in some bistro lights, a bunch of native plantings. If you go next slide, I'll kind of lay out what the pergola is going to look like. So one of the things you're going to notice in our presentation tonight that differs from when we were before this board last year was that initially there's the red mulch area just beyond this area. And initially we had shown what's possible there for activation. When Dan and I really started to dig in here and figured out how we want to execute on this, we decided to really put a lot more emphasis on the pergola area and spend some more money on the pergola itself and remove that for a later phase. So that what we proposed before is not part of this project, the upper area. So what that allows us to do is really invest in this pergola. So initially we had talked about maybe doing a wood frame pergola, but I think Dan's interest is to really activate that patio for as many months of the year as possible. So this is an aluminum pergola with a matte black powder coat finish. It has a louvered roof, so it becomes watertight. So if it does rain, you can close it on a beautiful day, it can stay open. It also has mechanical sides. So when it does become cold with heat lamps, we can lower the sides. It's aesthetically pleasing. It maintains well. They're very consistent in restaurant uses. So, you know, the goal was just to really kind of show you what it's going to look like. And these are all very good representations of a restaurant setting. Next slide, please. So this is, again, another view if you're looking in. This is the pergola underneath. We're going to address it with some plantings, which I'll go over, with some bistro lighting, some patio tables. The next thing I'm going to go over is the pervious pavers that we're going to use for the floor. Next slide, please. So we're going to use a red permeable patio paver that'll look just like a brick. It's going to be done in a herringbone pattern with a nice border. This image is meant to reflect what an aerial would look like. For those of you who aren't familiar, permeable pavers allow stormwater drainage to go through the mortar joints of the pavers themselves, which allows us to kind of minimize any major obstructions and have more usable patio space. Next slide, please. This is a vantage looking back, kind of ties it all together and just lets you know what it would look like if you were sitting in the patio looking out at Elliott Street. Next slide. And then this is just kind of a reiteration of what we went over. So the design elements we're bringing to this pergola area is integrated concrete planters. Some of the existing concrete we're going to reuse and turn those into planters. We're going to hang vines from the pergola, make it feel very warm, very intentional, very, very much like a bookstore, cafe, local place to have a cup of coffee. The pergola structure we went over. And then, you know, from a design aesthetic, we're really trying to tie in the black and the copper. So the building right now has existing copper flashing. We're going to maintain all the copper details. And then anything we do for an exposed metal is going to carry that. So we're really trying to simplify the exterior palette. So it's going to be red brick, white trim, black on the windows, black on the pergola, black on the planters, and then copper for all the flashing. So very simple, but timeless. Next slide, please. So the next area I'd like to draw your attention to is the front corner. It's a very important corner because it's the intersection. Again, it's if you're coming from Dorchester, it's the first thing you see. If you're sitting at the stoplight, from pretty much any direction, you stare at it. So it's always been one of my least favorite parts of the existing building. It just feels very unintentional. The building's oriented to Elliott Street. It just feels like that left side's always been neglected. Next slide, please. So again, I think this is a perfect representation of it. This is what it feels like right now. It feels very cold. Feels very unintentional. It doesn't feel like this is an intended vantage point. Next slide, please. And here's what we're proposing. Looking to activate it in a few different ways. One of which is we're adding decorative copper sconces all around the perimeter here to give it that old kind of timeless historic look. We're getting rid of the black wrought iron railing. We're adding a black planter system here as well with an evergreen hedge to kind of create some privacy and a buffer between the seating. We are proposing the same red permeable patio pavers for this patio area as well. And these will predominantly be a series of two tops and then some attractive ivy and vines growing up the side of the building. Next slide, please. So this is a good example of how using planters can create a visual divide without actually having to build a wall. Very similar to this, we're proposing an inkberry holly and evergreen shrub. It's relatively hardy, it's native on the perimeter. It'll look very similar to this with a matte black powder coated to match the pergola on the other side. This is a representation of kind of the ivy, the vine that we're talking about doing up the side of the building. Next slide, please. This is a planting schedule that we're anticipating for all the planters on the site. From a focus standpoint, our goal is really to bring in native seasonal interests, pollinator friendly, things that are low maintenance. We did bring in some winter interests with the inkberry, bearberry, and some switchgrass to provide structure and evergreen appeal in the colder months. Some pollinator support. These are all planter friendly. And then there's a layering approach, somewhat thoughtful in the sense that the taller grasses and the shrubs will be in the center or the back, and the cascading plants like the creeping phlox will be towards the edges. I think that's it for that slide. Next slide, please. This is just an example and just kind of refreshing this board on what's possible in the parking lot in the future. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Wharf Park, the project that's being done there. We would love some sort of collaboration so that this could be an addition to the farmers market. This could be something that Dan puts on with his team that supports that. There's just a lot of opportunity to shut down parking in that parking lot and have that be part of stuff we do down in the village. So this is just an example of what's possible. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to somewhat just breeze through the interior where our design theme was. So our theme is a refurbished bank. So we're trying to incorporate a lot of the existing components, but also bring in a little bit more modern of a feel. So this slide's just meant to reflect all the different textures and colors that we use in our design. Next slide, please. So these are inspiration images. It has a grand feel already, but it's very dark. It doesn't, if you notice that a lot of the bright and the area finishes in here kind of bring it to life. A lot of greenery, not French bistro, not tate, but more of a historic kind of neutral palette. Next slide, please. These are the different components. We've got some existing chandeliers that we're intending to refurbish. We've got some old bank picture lights we're going to refurbish. We're going to upcycle some of the deposit boxes, neutral paint tones, warm wood accents, warm leathered quartzite for the countertop, pendants for countertop lighting. Next slide, please. When you walk in the front door right now, one of the things that Dan and I have spent a lot of time talking about is really making that feel grand. And I always imagined it kind of being like an old A&P where you walk in, there's a tile inlay right at the mouth of the entrance there. So this slide just meant to reflect kind of what it can feel like when you step into a space and immediately are kind of overwhelmed with design intent. Next slide, please. Carry the inspiration through the bathrooms. Again, classy, clean, kind of timeless. Next slide, please. And then this is the last slide of the deck, but we actually, the image that Dan had shared earlier, when we were removing some of the components of the vault, I actually found that behind the vault. So it was the original marketing material from when the bank first opened. I found a deposit slip from 1929 when the bank first opened, in fully intact, mint condition in that envelope. And I sent it to Dan immediately, and I said, what stands out to me about this image is that if it almost feels like you're going to an opera house. It feels so grand, and it feels like it was designed with so much intent to be this extraordinary building, and it doesn't feel like that anymore. So I found in one of the historical references for the village that the architect had said that his design intent was to be reminiscent of aristocratic New England structures built for public service in prosperous towns. And I just wanted to close with saying that, like Dan had mentioned, that we didn't just say we want to put a market, let's find a building. We actually designed the exterior and the interior, right? So the concept itself gives life back to the building and fulfills the original design intent of the building. And then a lot of our exterior design improvements as well. So it's a combination of the two that bring it together. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. That's really incredible and an amazing amount of thought and detail that you've put into this presentation. Questions from the board?
I just have one. JD, could you go back and bring up the image that shows the area enclosed? The
pergola?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, Shine, if you could go back, please. This one?
Yeah. So where's the best point to it enclosed? What does it look like?
So it retracts. So it retracts up.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why this frame is so thick
Yeah.
is it's similar to integrated blinds in a house.
Sure.
You have to build a pretty thick structure for it to retract. So it actually retracts up into there, so you can't see it, and then it comes down.
Is it clear?
No, it's well, you can choose different finishes, but this one would be a very. It's not clear. It's like a very light mesh. So it's almost got like a screen, like in your window finish.
Okay.
Where it comes down, where you can see through it, just like a screen in your window.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's got small enough holes as to where it can actually maintain
Okay.
temperature.
Okay. So it's mostly a barrier to keep out rain.
Rain, mosquitoes, bugs,
Yeah.
and if you do have heat in there, just like heat lamps, it's not meant to be warm where you can sleep in there, but it's warm enough to take the edge off so you can enjoy the space in a colder month.
Okay, great. Yeah. Great.
Is that intended to be attached to the building or detached from it?
It doesn't have to be. We were thinking that we wanted to span over the handicap ramp because I think it feels more complete. So it could be done in two ways, where it could post down right in front of the building itself or ledger to the building itself. As of right now, we're exploring ledgering to the building just to avoid more unnecessary posts. That was where we're headed with the design.
And on the street side, there is a retaining wall there now, right?
There is, yeah. If you go back one slide, Shane. Excuse me, one more slide. Yeah, this is what's there now. Again, it's kind of, we plan to repoint all that red brick.
So that'll stay though, right?
That'll stay, yep,
Okay,
yep.
nice, great.
That's actually beautiful work. It just needs some love.
Maggie or Jim?
Thank you.
Yep.
Quick question for you. So on the Adams Street side, do you think you'll have the depth from the sidewalk to the building to do the, I mean, I love the planters.
Yep.
I think it's really slick.
Yep.
But then to do seating, I'm not seeing a dimension on here.
So this slide's actually really helpful for you. So you see the thickness? It's almost 2 feet thick. The planter would sit on the top of this granite stone.
I don't know, I get that. I'm talking about the Adams Street side, the other corner.
It has the same retaining
Oh, it
wall with
does
the
the
same
same
cap.
thing?
With the same cap, yep.
Okay,
If
so,
you go to the right, Cheyenne, a few slides, I think there's an existing. Keep going. Keep going, please. A few more. I think it's on the next corner. Yeah, right here. So see how it's got the same detail?
all right.
So this railing would be removed and the planters would sit on the top of the wall.
Okay, and then beyond that, you do have space to do seating.
We do. If you go back one slide, Shane, I don't know if there's a measurement on here, but
Yeah.
this is, I think it's about eight in the widest part. I want to say it's almost 8 to 10 feet.
Oh, it's that
It gets a little thinner, yeah. So you have room for a 4-foot walking path and, like I said, a 2-top up against the building.
Great.
And JD, one more question on that pergola area. How far down do you have to take that grade to get, because that grade
Slopes up.
rises
Yep.
with,
So what we're doing is we're cutting. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was a touchscreen. This is an accessible landing here, so we're bringing the walking grade down to this accessible landing.
Yeah.
So in the lowest point, it's coming down about 2.5 feet,
Yeah.
and the furthest point, it's coming down about 6 feet.
Yeah.
But this retaining wall right here, Sean, actually, again, as this ramp slopes up, this retaining wall comes down, so it's already built down to that depth.
Okay,
So we're leaving all of this retaining wall, and then
Okay.
we're just reinforcing this wall.
great. So when you take out the deepest part, that the bottom of that wall might not be deep enough as it is right now.
So we did test pits on the brick wall. The brick wall definitely is not. So we
Yeah.
are intending to shore that wall.
Got it.
These two walls, again, because it's hard to see from this elevation, but because the ramp goes up and this wall is like this,
Yep.
the ramp is actually lower than the grade of the
I
patio
understand.
will be.
Yeah.
So it would be hard for me to do a test pit without digging up that entire
Yeah,
patio.
no, I
you
understand
know.
that, yeah.
But we're pretty confident that we have the depth that we need with the walls.
That's great. Retaining that wall will be nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
Great. Thanks.
Yep.
I have a few questions, but I first want to say I love the concept. I love the activation on this corner. I'm really excited to see some more activity in Milton Village. It's a great building, and what you're looking to do, is great. So I just have a few kind of operational kind of questions, really, and maybe some for a little bit more information. Is there exhaust associated, I'm sure, with the kitchen in the basement? Is that going to run straight up through the building, or is there, and through that center well?
Yep, that's a good question. It won't run straight up through the building. It will run up come out the back of the building.
Yeah,
I believe on the parking lot side, there's a flat roof that JD can explain it better, I'm sure.
There's a flat roof, like right here, which is on the back side of the building. So all mechanicals, everything's gonna vent through that roof. It's all gonna be on that roof. On that roof, there is a 2-foot parapet. So most of the mechanicals, everything is submerged from the street level. So when you're looking up plus the parapet, there'll be very little exposed above it.
So that, I think it would be helpful to have a roof plan which shows, where the equipment's going to be. Just so that we know we have it documented, so when you're going into construction, and so that we're just all clear how the exhaust is being handled, because, that's an important feature, especially if you're going to want to activate all sides of the building. And then there's a couple of things that were noted in the narrative that I didn't see on the plans. Like you mentioned, you're going to have bike racks. I didn't see those on the plan.
Yep.
So like if you could put those on the plan, show us how many you're going to have. And then also you mentioned that you were going to be doing a lot of composting. So is that going to be held outside, and is it near the dumpster? Just where that's going to go. And then I really would like to see the elevations that kind of, the building elevations would show the things that you were talking about, like, so that we can see the heights, the relative heights to things, like signage, where will the signage go? What the mounting height of the light fixtures are relative to the windows. Just a little more detail about how you're going to do that. Conceptually, it all looks good, but, having it documented on the elevations, I think would be helpful. And then things of operational side, deliveries. You intend to do that in the parking lot?
Yes, so there are two entrances. There's an entrance on the Adams Street side that goes directly into the basement. So that's accessed sort of adjacent to the back parking lot entrance. So we would imagine vehicles, we could direct vehicles to park in the back lot and load in there. And there's also ramp entrance. Is it fully ramped to go into the street level from the back parking lot as well? But yeah.
Do you see that as being large enough for the vehicles that you anticipate making deliveries here? Do you think you're going to need vehicles that would park in the street or park in the parking spaces? I'm just thinking like the loading zone at Steel and Rye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our vision was that vehicles would pull in, unload, pull back into the lot straight in, probably blocking the lot off, unload, and then move out from there. The deliveries would be relatively quick. I don't think that we would need a full loading zone, but it's certainly something we could address, I think, in the future if it seemed like it was an issue. But knowing that we have have the parking lot area accessible in the back, and that's where both of the delivery entrances would be. I think that's probably where we would start, would be directing all deliveries to back into that lot, sort of along the curb line that is adjacent to the Citizens ATM.
Okay. And then your hours of operation?
We're planning 6:30 a.m. open, with loosely probably a 9 p.m. close,
And then, is that 7 days a week?
7 days a week.
And then how about that outdoor seating area? Is that open the same hours?
Yes.
And the beer, wine, and spirits, do you anticipate that those can be consumed on site, or are those to take out
That would be off-premise retail.
off premise? Okay. And then the Uber Eats, I'm a little concerned about that location of the pickup and the intersection. Yeah. You know, I think you all know that street and that intersection's challenging. People come down and want to make that turn to the right. Have you thought about whether you would want to approach the town about those parking spaces right in front? Whether those could be a limited 15-minute or, you know, kind of a pickup drop-off? And any other thing that could help, Mike? I'm just kind of concerned about how that congestion's going to build at the intersection there.
Yep.
If there's extensive Uber Eats or takeout, pickup,
Double
drop-off, where
parking,
people are going to go. Double parking, exactly.
Yeah, we could certainly consider it. I think we could also, you know, we could potentially earmark a spot in the back as well, if necessary, rather than changing street signs on the street. But
I believe the parking in front of the National is 15 minutes, just in that section right in front of the bank.
Probably for the bank, right? People running in? Yeah, okay. And then,
The other thing that's helpful, I think, is that High Street is one way up.
right,
So there's no conflict of traffic coming down High Street and entering into the flow that's on Adams Street. You know, my office is halfway up the hill.
Right, right.
It's strictly one way up.
And that's where a lot of people who would run into the bank would park on that high street while they
and run into the gym.
and run into the
Wait, so on that point, do you think your customers will need longer than 15 minutes parking?
I think some would for sure. But I think, you know, for Uber Eats or people that have ordered ahead and are running to pick something up, I think those 15-minute spots would be great. One thing we do believe about parking is that not every person that's coming to the market is driving to Adams and Elliott, parking and going in. I think you're in the gym, you've parked, you've gone to the gym, and then you're popping in, or you're heading down to jump on the trolley and you pop into the market, or you're at the post office, you're using the village for something else, and the market is part of your trip. So I don't think, you know, I think a pretty significant number of visits that we'll get daily, they're in the village for something else already. You know, I think between Higher Ground, 60 Adams, and Muscle and Flow, I think we'll see lots of traffic from those spots. So people who have come down, parked somewhere else, gone in for a class, and then they're coming out and hopefully hit the market on the way out before they go to their vehicle.
Yeah, and
You
this,
don't anticipate the 15-minute needing to change to a longer period of time?
I actually didn't realize it was there. I think it'd be really helpful.
And I just had one other question coming. The location of the beverage cases seem to be in front of the windows on the Elliott Street side. Is that the case?
Nope, they'll be actually set into the walls. Like, so on the left and the right, when you enter in, there's a I don't know the dimension, maybe a 6-foot stretch of space before you reach the first window.
Okay.
So there's,
So there's nothing blocking the windows then? That was really kind
No,
of my
that would
question.
be bad design.
the cooler actually drops down, so it's a full stand-up cooler in the 6-foot space, and then it drops down.
Okay, great.
Underneath the window.
All right, yeah, it was hard to tell from the plan how tall those are. Because it's showing refrigerated sections there on the plan.
The window.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think the landlord would be happy with the coolers blocking the windows.
Well, you just have to ask. All right. Yeah, those are my questions.
And on the hours of operation, is that pretty standard for commercial in our commercial districts, 6:30 to 9?
I don't know the answer to that.
yeah, I don't know. There's a town bylaw time, but I don't know the answer. I don't know, for example, when Dunkin' Donuts opens in East Milton.
Yeah, so I think Dunkin' Donuts in East Milton, they I think they have a permit for 5:30. So my understanding that I don't think we actually have hours of operation in the commercial district, which I kind of found a little bit odd.
Well, the gym is open early, right? Muscle and Flow?
Yeah, we open at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
It's on,
Friday.
yeah, and that's under the purview of the select board as the licensing board is, time. They'll have to grant the liquor license. It is a liquor license not for consumption on the premises. The town still has, I think, 2 licenses available to give out. We separately have a history of having to apply for one-offs for liquor license for consumption on premises. Obviously, Steel and Rye is one of those. But I think, as you say, Steel and Rye is a come in, sit down, you're there for an hour and a half, unless you're just going in to buy bread, but otherwise you're there. And so your need for parking for a longer period of time is there. This is strikes me as a much different concept.
And I'm not against the 6:30 start time. I just sort of was wondering what the general time was. Because I would think that perhaps you might need earlier if Muscle and Flow is open at 5 and 6:30. I think a lot of people could be on the road if they're driving into Boston. I'm not sure. It comes down to your staff too. But so I don't know if I was just wondering what the bylaw was. I didn't think we had one. So
I think Coffee Break is open at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm guessing, but I know they're open before. Steel and Rye opens at 7, and they're open before that. So
and then when you close at 9, will the pergola patio area or your patio areas be open to the public for people to hang out in after hours?
I think once we've closed the building, we'll probably, have that area closed. The lights are off and things like that.
Because it looks like it'd be a good place for kids to.
Yeah.
There'd be an insurance risk associated with that, so they'd have to really pay attention to their insurance requirements.
Yeah, and if you lived at Milton Hill House, you might see people kind of hanging around after hours. So I don't know if you had like a gate or something you were planning on closing.
Yeah, we could certainly add at least a simple chain and signage that it's closed or opened. So I think once we've closed and cleaned up for the night, we certainly want the property empty.
Yeah.
And lights would want to be off, unless they were on a trigger for motion detection. But you'd want lights off after a certain period of time, and we do provide that the lighting will be dark sky compliant.
And then when your pergola sides are down, are you still allowed to have your heat lamps inside going? I mean, is that a fire code thing?
That would be a question for the fire department.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any restriction as long as it's not an open flame. Like they have infrared heaters that can change those requirements. So I think if you were to have an open flame, it would probably change that.
Yeah.
But we'd be looking to leverage infrared and other sorts of more efficient technologies.
Okay.
I've got a quickie. The space behind the pergola and on the High Street side, it just says proposed low maintenance plantings and landscaping. I mean, is that just going to be kind of wildflowers or?
Yeah, so right
intent
now
for
it's
that space?
right now it's just a red mulch bed. We were just going to carry some of our plantings that we had around so it was consistent and just not have it just be a dead mulch bed and just have low level plantings in there. So nothing crazy, but it's not like a butterfly sanctuary or anything. We just wanted to have like a nice clean presentation. So.
And is that the same elevation as High Street or the same elevation as the pergola? And could you use that space is what I'm getting at.
So in our initial proposal, when we came before this board, we intended to use that space. And I think there is, once this is up and running, it's developing cash flow, and we've proven the concept to the town, and we think that we're probably coming back at some point. We just, when we were talking through how to execute on this, the pergola, the way we wanted to do it became an expensive investment. You've heard me say it before, but complexity is the enemy of execution. We really wanted to slim this down and get it open and running. Prove what we're capable of doing, and then if we find that there's need for expansion, we would come back before this board for that approval.
Fair enough. And then the 7 spots in the back, they'll be open, I mean, they'll be accessible to your customers 7 days a week unless you do the outdoor concept with the food trucks.
Correct. Special occasion. Yeah, if there was a special occasion, we'd probably close it down for that occasion, but otherwise it's open.
All right, great. Thank you.
Go ahead, go, Sean.
Sorry. And also, have you had a neighborhood kind of neighborhood over there to get their input or concerns or approval?
Not yet.
One more
You're good,
question.
yeah.
By the way, I think it's a fantastic project. Great to revitalize just an awesome building, like you said. And I do agree with you. When you drive up and you come through the village, it is the first thing you see. So it's going to be terrific. Do you have a path forward, a timeline that you could share with us? And if you don't, it's understandable. But if you do,
We currently don't have a building commissioner, so I submitted the building permit. I think last time I was before this board, I think I mentioned that my goal is by year end. We submitted our full building permit by the end of the year. It has not been reviewed yet because of the lack of commercial support at the building department. So
GD, you have a full set of construction drawings that you've submitted for permit?
we have.
Okay.
So I was hoping to move them in parallel. My intent was to, I assume there's a round of comments coming back from the building department, go before this board. So depending on this, I think we're close on the building permit. I don't, we hired a code consultant. I don't think it's a heavy review on the plans. As far as construction itself, I'm always going to be aggressive on my timelines and be optimistic. I think it's a 6-month lift for us. I think, by year end is entirely possible.
Great.
So
Great. We hope so too.
I'm always going to be optimistic and aggressive on this stuff. So.
There is a basic construction phasing plan that's outlined briefly in section 2.7 of the narrative. Demolition and site prep months 1 and 2, interior renovation, mechanical installations months 2 and 3, exterior improvements months 4 to 5, final finishing inspections, etc. Opening months 6 to 8. So somewhere in an 8 plus or minus month time frame.
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. So,
Do you,
yeah, go ahead.
Cheryl, you mentioned bike racks. I'm happy to add one specifically to the plan. There are 2 right there on the sidewalk as well. There's those U-shaped style ones that are right on Adam Street, right on the Adam Street side, right by the parking lot. So we were hoping that the combination of those plus a small one on site would be sufficient for 6 to 8 bikes. As far as mechanical plan for the roof, the MEPs do have a roof diagram. It's certainly not an architect's roof plan, but it does show the makeup air unit. It does show some of the ventilation on the roof. So there was some thought put into trying to get everything on there because it is the most hidden spot. The rest of the roof, because of the gable, there's really no opportunity to put any mechanicals on it. So
You're talking about the upper roof, the highest portion of the roof?
the lower flat roof on the parking lot side of the building.
And the equipment is not going to be taller than the parapet?
I can't guarantee that. I would say the equipment probably is taller than the parapet. I think in most situations, you hope that the parapet in the vantage point kind of takes some of the sting out of seeing it. There's unfortunately no other place we thought about this pretty extensively. The old bank had like the condensers on the handicap. It was the first thing you saw when you walked in. That's off the table. So we're trying to consolidate it all to there. There's options we could do. We could add screening to that. There's many things we can do once we get it up there, but that is the most desirable area to put them because it really won't be noticeable to the public.
Yeah, you have different elevations that you'll perspective, if you're looking from High Street or if you're, more of an uphill versus a downhill view also. So it would be nice, excuse me, to at least know what I imagine if you file for the building permit, the mechanical engineer knows the size of that piece of equipment. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice to have an understanding if it should be or need to be screened. So it's just.
When I'm
Sometimes
walking down,
it can be-
I'm walking down from my
Yeah,
office,
You're going to see it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to want to see it.
We could commit to, that's an easy lift on our part. We could commit to screening right now.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. But that's it? Just that lower roof? That's the only place that the equipment's going? The exhaust as well?
Yeah.
And are you going to be doing frying in the kitchen? The reason I'm asking this, like if you ever walk by, like on a sidewalk and you've got a kitchen exhaust and you've got grease coming down and you're uncomfortable walking by that, from that kitchen, the air coming out of it, the greasy air coming out of it, the whatever could be on the sidewalk. So it's just like the proximity of it to the sidewalk, to the public realm. I'm just trying to make sure we understand it in advance. That's all.
Understood.
Totally. Yeah, and this won't be a mushroom horizontally off the building. This will be on the flat roof section above.
Okay.
That's approximately 12 to 15 feet in the air after it comes to the roof.
Okay.
And it's all at the back of the building in the parking lot.
Correct. Yep.
You're not near the sidewalk.
I thought it was towards the front.
No, it's still
The low roof.
Yeah.
All right, let me look at that plan.
No,
Yeah, if
the
you-
front roof is the gable slate. I think it's slate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
The whole roof is
Understood, but there's a small portion, right?
Yeah, there's a flat portion above the vault area where the bathrooms are. That's a small flat area.
All the more reason for this roof plan that we don't have.
Right here, right? Rear activation images shows it. Shows the fire escape in the flat roof. It doesn't show a parapet wall, but
Yeah, the roof is lower than the top.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I think some screening would get it done. Would you have any problem with the historical commission doing exterior, like adding a couple of feet or something to that little wall?
Prefer to avoid
Right, right.
having to go to a board that doesn't have jurisdiction.
We could ask for comments though, if they had any, but I think everything that you're doing is,
Yeah.
I can say would be very much supported in preserving this building. So I have just a couple questions while you look that up, if that's, you're looking.
Go ahead.
So I love that the copper flashing, you're going to maintain. I didn't hear, and maybe you said it, but the slate roof will be retained as well?
It will be retained, yep.
Great. And some of the, I think the most iconic features of that building are the Chippendale roof. As you're coming in, you're going to be able to preserve that railing or replace it to look like it does currently.
Yeah, we would have already started on the paint, but it's been pretty cold and rainy outside.
Right,
so
right.
We wanted to jump on that. Unfortunately, the weather hasn't cooperated. So.
Right. And the front entry is the woodwork, the architectural detail on that front entry is incredible. And you're going to be able to preserve that, strip that down and have that repainted?
You're talking about on the exterior?
The front, yeah, the frame with the ornate top, which is gorgeous. And I like to hear the cap granite you're going to preserve on the top of the brick buildings. And the steps going up to it are also that same granite.
Granite, those are going to stay.
So how do you treat because it has holes drilled into those steps in the granite.
Yep.
Do you
Usually just fill the holes with mortar. And
you feel you can't flip the step over or do anything like just
I wouldn't.
so it's a clean.
No, usually when if you move a railing, the hole is generally an inch and a half. You can do color match mortar, so you can really spend some time trying to get a salt and pepper finish on it.
Okay.
But oftentimes you really don't notice it.
Okay. So I trust you know what you're doing with that. So
Yeah, they're
just sometimes
fine.
you don't want to see those holes when you
If they
walk
were
up.
brand new steps, I think they'd be pretty obvious if you cut them and removed them. But because they're weathered and they have a lot of character, I think they already have distress to them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I would agree. That's great. And I love the front door entrance, what you were talking about, especially the artist that you have, the black with the gold, doing some gold leafing. I was thinking it might be nice to sort of reflect that in your signage. So I know you have, it looks like white on the sign, but maybe you do a black with a gold leaf on your signage to really, to work with that front door and give it a real branding as in that floor that you're talking about, doing a tile entryway with some, the initials of the SNR, whatever. I don't know what you're going to do, but I love that. I love that concept. I was also asking about, and the other architectural thing is the corbels along the upper molding, that you'll be able to restore. And I know some
and the
of
ones that are missing were intended.
the ones that you're going to miss it. Yeah. I occasionally see one on the ground. I want to pick up and save because it's so beautiful.
Our intent is to preserve and protect everything that's there that's capable. If anything's rotted, we'll replace it in kind.
that's great. And so one more, so repointing, as you probably could see in certain areas, and I think on your pictures, there's really good repointing of brick and there's really bad repointing where it looks white and it looks, you see all this, on stone walls, it's the same way, but I'm sure you have somebody who knows how to blend it in so it looks like the mortar matches the rest of the mortar on the building.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're probably across the street, you're gonna maybe eventually, have to look at that as well.
Yep.
So that's great to have a good mason on that. Will you have a generator?
Probably not.
Probably not,
We're
you don't-
planning on it. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you felt like you needed one because that was just another piece of equipment I thought of. But if you don't, that's fine. So in front of the building, I know we talked about the bike racks, but one of the things that we try to look at is improving the streetscape, whenever a new project's done. Some of the pictures that the front tree, I can't tell if it was half dead or half alive.
Half dead.
That's what I thought it looked like.
At least half dead.
So if you could, and this is something I also would love to see, doing sort of a private-public partnership, but when new developments come in, we've asked with the overlay zoning in the lower mills that when trees are planted, that a tree guard is put in place, which not only it helps to protect the trees, it keeps car doors from banging into the trees, it keeps dogs that are being walked. I know dogs that just love to stop and utilize the tree. So tree guards just add an extra level of that black detail that I think would look really nice. I know you only have just one on the side and one in the front, but it would be great if you could add a nice tree guards and if you do a new tree there. And I think it would be subject to getting approval from the town, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, we've talked about it. We were gonna approach the town and see what they want to do, but if they wanted us to pay for the tree, I'd be happy to. It's not.
Yeah, and they may pay for the tree, and if you then, because there is a budget for trees, so they may replace it. But if you could add a detailed tree guard, I think that would be really nice.
But Meredith, they might only pay for a smaller tree. I think they would prefer you pay for a tree and they plant it for you.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know what you get, so you might want to choose that. That's true. You might want to get something that.
And you might want a tree that's more fastigious growing, so it's up, a little bit more narrow than a wider canopy that you have to prune.
Do they give you say? I've never worked. Do they give you say what tree goes in there? Or?
You can make a request. They have some options of what the trees they usually order. We've been requesting, or I've been, a Princeton elm, actually, which is a really hardy street tree, and it will emulate what the old elms used to look like in that area, and they grow quickly, and it will actually grow up above and give a nice shade, but not obstruct. And so that's what you're seeing sort of going in on Adams Street, so it would reflect that too. But they do have some other options, some I think more flowering trees. They have a few different natives that you could look
those
at.
are flowering trees right now.
Yeah, the pears that are up there, those have been more prone to disease resistance. So you'll see some that are dead up there, some that look great. The one to the right, when you're looking at the bank, to the left, looks really healthy and looks really good. That's done well. But some of the ones that as you go up the hill, and the town has been, because they worry about the watering, they've been planting really small, like overly small trees that really don't look good for many years. So you might want to do something just independently with a larger caliper
In
tree.
the pears, the state is looking at outlawing pear trees as invasive, so they might not be able to be planted. So that I wouldn't count on planting a pear.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll engage them.
But that would be really, that whole front entry is going to be really special. And then I love the lanterns that you were doing. I love sort of like the look of like a gaslight district. I think down there could be really cool. I know one of the on Central Avenue across from 36 Central, there's actually a woman who redid a really charming house and did actual real gas lights that run. I don't know if that's ever possible. It could be spectacular as you come in, that would be on a limited timer and actually have a real gas, sort of a bevelo gas lantern look. But I don't know if that, it may be historically, they may have been gas lights when the building was originally built, but I love that at least you're trying to make that copper lantern look. So I would love to see a spec of what that is, the size, like Cheryl was saying, the height of where that would be mounted. But it looks like it's tying into maybe where those currently lights are.
In the lighting schedule, I did give a spec of the actual fixture that we were anticipating.
Oh, okay.
But, it is an electric one. So we would have two options. One would be we could put flicker bulbs in them, which look like gas lamps. But I'm not opposed to the idea of gas lamps. What I would ask is that if it's possible to maybe do an oversized version of the same fixture and a gas function at the two entrances.
Yeah.
So that it's specific to the entrances, just because we do have a fair amount of them just for energy efficiency.
I think that would be incredible.
And we can distinguish them by doing a larger version at the main entrance.
Exactly. Have really big. I think that would just be really make a statement and make it really, really special. So
that fixture does come in a gas version of the same fixture.
And I would love to see that. Maybe you might start something down there where it becomes a gaslight, the gaslight district.
Sure.
Something really cool for Milton Village. I think that was all that I is all that I had for questions.
I have one more
you have
after
one more?
Cheryl.
Yeah.
Do you want to go, Cheryl? Do you have a question?
No, go ahead.
What's your strategy on signage? Have you thought through how you're going to brand with your signage?
We've actually just started that conversation, so we expect to be back before the board with, in conjunction with the sign review committee and all of that.
Okay.
But probably don't have anything ready at this time to present.
Sounds good.
So I'm just looking at sorry, Sean, were you done?
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Okay. Just looking again at the Google Street View. One thing, JD, when you were talking about that, how the corner of Elliott and Adams presents itself, I've always felt that that's not a very pedestrian-friendly corner with the concrete right up to the corner. And then if you add these solid planters, you're going to make it more solid for the pedestrian. And I'm wondering if you can have some other way, some alternating between railing and planters so that it doesn't feel so, Adams Street is pretty inhospitable to pedestrians in several places because of the walls. And I feel like this is going to add to it versus, maybe you can take a look at that when you're over there again, at least at the corner, think about how that would increase that sort of, it's already a very narrow space too. You have the transformer there, and then you've got the street signal light posts and the ramps, and you have very little room really for the pedestrians to sort of walk around the corner. So I just kind of feel like it's not going to be as, on the street side, as friendly as it is going to be on the patio side of it.
So thinking about it as often as I walk through there, it's almost just a step, that corner is there to step across to the other side of Adams Street. There's almost no use of that side of Adams Street until you get up beyond the Citizens Bank.
But that's what our overlay is hoping to not have it be inhospitable for pedestrians, right? Because you want improvements to the condition that's there, right? And what you're doing is going to be an improvement. I'm just concerned about the actual intersection right there at the corner.
I do see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying, because a lot of times when you see the planters, you see them from on the ground where you're looking down on them. Where this,
they're elevated, yeah.
They're elevated, but you're looking down on them. Where this, because they're up higher and the sidewalk's a little bit lower, it might be a different perspective where it does look like.
I think it'd be helpful to do a section through there, so that you actually have the dimensions on there and eye level height versus like where that plant starts. Or mock it up with something in the field.
But maybe what you're saying is do a section, do a planter, do a section, do a planter. So you have some open, so it's not just a solid planter, but you break it up and have a rail maybe in between the planters to give some of that.
Or even if there's a way for the plant materials to drape down, just something to make it feel less solid. I guess,
And I
is
think they
my-
will, the plantings he's going to do will drape down, but in the wintertime,
Right, true.
you don't have that.
Well, in this photo, it looks like there's a big mechanical.
That's the transformer.
That's the transformer for the lights.
Walk's pretty wide right there.
Yeah,
Sidewalk.
this site plan actually shows it does widen on that corner. You can see it's kind of got a red block here, but you see this outline right here?
Yeah, it gets very
It's actually-
wide.
It does get really wide. The transformer's right there. So this actual area is really wide. Even with the tree box right here, there's still a good clearance in here. I mean, I park here when I take my kids to kids boxing, and we walk this way. And you know, the sidewalk is, even with someone with a stroller, it's really this intersection, which is obviously outside of our control. This is the chaotic part. Is when you go across this, there's just a lot of people
Right.
moving fast.
So maybe that's something at the end of your project that you can actually do a mock-up and you, because I trust both of your taste in doing this, but maybe you put some planters up, see how it feels on the site at the time, and
Yeah.
can just do a test on your own to see how you feel about it.
Sure.
It's a great idea.
And just make sure the planters, are as attractive as the building.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of planters that definitely look like plastic.
All plastic.
I think one of the things that makes this team kind of unique is that we're both Milton residents. I'm obviously heavily invested down in the village. Dan's a local operator, so he cares a lot about representing his brand and kind of being a local. We're fully aligned, I think, as a community to see this. And no one's disappearing, right? Like, I'm down there every single day. If I'm looking at plastic planters, I'm like, damn, we gotta get rid of those plastic planters. It's not a private equity firm starting a restaurant and it's a bunch of managers and no one's there. Everybody from Dan's team to my team is just intimately involved with this project. So we're also open to that open collaboration that, if it does look great, but someone's got a better idea, we're open to kind of pivoting in the field as well.
I have one more question. JD, the area where the pergola is going to go, right now, that's a grass area.
Right.
When you get to the end of the grass area, and if you were to be going down High Street, it looks like is there a red brick area there now?
It's mulch.
It's mulch.
That's mulch?
It's really
That's what that is?
bad mulch.
Yeah, it's really bad.
And
It's
Okay.
it's bright red.
It's bright red. It looks like brick. It's mulch.
will that area be used? The mulch area?
So in the initial presentation that we made to this board, we talked about activating that space
Yeah.
as part of patio. That is no longer part of this. We're just going to landscape that area
Okay.
with similar plantings to
Okay.
the rest.
I understand.
Yep.
Okay.
For
Thank you.
now, and then again, if we need it for expansion or
Sure.
we feel like it's appropriate in the business,
You'll come back. I understand. Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's anything.
See if
I
there's
have
public
nothing else.
comment.
Yeah, if there's anyone here or on Zoom who would like to ask any questions or make any comments to this project, please feel free. Any hands up, Cheyenne, on this?
Nobody on Zoom.
You're on mute.
No hands on Zoom.
No hands on Zoom. Okay, great. Well, I think this looks great. I did have one last question. Did you say before you had to go to the ZBA no,
not that we're aware of, no.
you don't. Okay, good. That's why I just
go to-
wanted
We
to.
have to go to the select board for licensing. We have to go to the sign review committee for the approval of the signs. I think that's it.
Great. That's great. So you'll come back with a signage plan as part of maybe as you think about
And
it
you're
further.
part of that process, as you know.
Right.
You're the initial step, I think, in the sign review process.
And I just would say a non-illuminated sign
Back to the
for anyone who knows me. But I think that's great. So I think we can make a motion to continue the public hearing until, do you have a date that you were thinking, Ned?
I think, well, it may be ambitious, but you were talking about a May 8th date. Have you
That would be
considered
our,
what your next regularly scheduled meeting would
we
be?
have, because we have town meeting
Oh, you have town
that we
meeting.
don't know. So we do have it as a
I see from
placeholder.
the town meeting goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
The 8th is Thursday. You guys might be exhausted and not want to meet on the 8th. But, you know, so, as soon after
Not
that,
the 18th, it would be the following
it's not the 8th, it would be the 15th.
15th.
That week we had it on the 13th,
Oh, the 13th, we did.
Tuesday the 13th.
Okay. And that would give us some time to get some of these deliverables ready and available so that, you know, those are filed and
Exactly.
you have a chance to review it before. So, and I'll have a draft of a site plan approval decision available for the board to review as well.
Okay, so, so a 7:05, will that work for the 13th of May?
Great.
Okay. Can I have a motion to continue the public hearing to Tuesday, May 13th at 7:05?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. So we may have Anthony Larkin on Zoom, but I think he's going to hold off on his presentation for now, given that following his comments, the sense of the board was that commuter rail station was not likely to be included in any of our plans. So I talked to Anthony and he said he's going to hold off on the presentation for this evening, but of course he can jump in anytime if he wants to raise his hand. So we can now move to our general discussion of MBTA communities and welcome, if the UTIL is here with us, I believe this evening.
Zoe is logging on now.
Okay. She's not used to us being this early.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, great. So where we last left off.
So can
oh, sure.
I just ask Zoe? Zoe, I trust that you're feeling better since you're with us
Yeah.
tonight. But I was wondering whether you felt well enough to have heard the comments at the public forum last week.
I did not, but I did get caught up by talking to the rest of my team.
Okay.
So I'm
Okay,
blessed.
great. All right, great. Thank you. And I'm
Yeah,
glad.
please feel free to chime in with anything that you want to kind of talk through together in terms of potential revisions. I have some revisions to show you today based on some of what was relayed to us, but happy to discuss other things that we may not have fully addressed with the analysis to date.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. So just to first, because we did have an email that also came in asking for looking at the adjacent, the 10% plan. And I wanted to address Mr. Doherty's comments on that. When I looked through that, and I know I talked to Cheyenne, she had run that sort of substituting the Tier 1 Elliott Street corridor for the more narrow Elliott Street corridor, the 2 Granite Ave and the 711 Randolph Avenue. And it ended up with 465 units on within that Elliott Street corridor, which seemed really heavy. And then when I saw the actually the way that would play out would be it would be spreading household units all throughout the Elliott Street corridor, but you'd have one neighbor who was zoned, the 2 more neighbors that weren't zoned, then another neighbor that would be zoned. And so it was sort of spotty in the way it was zoned, and it seemed that might be difficult for that neighborhood. So my impression was to maintain what we had, which still would be a commuter rail, commuter line plan, because it would include the Blue Hills station. It would sort of be going back to what the adjacent, in the minutes when you said, I think we all agree on this plan, the 10% plan, it would be maintaining that as sort of what we would be thinking that we might put as our 10% plan together.
So
And-
can I just
Yeah, do you want to address
make a
that?
comment? I
Yep.
do have concerns about process. We've had, when Tim Zerwinski was working with us and working with UTIL in 2023, he had set I guess it's a way of working that what UTIL would be asked to work on would come out of a planning board discussion, and it would be a joint request of the planning board to ask UTIL to study something. And I know we've had some requests come from individual board members in between meetings, which again is not following that procedure. But this one was ask a resident making a direct request to ask a study from UTIL without a discussion at the planning board. And I want to just be on the record of objecting to that because no other resident, we could potentially have dozens and dozens of residents asking for our consultants to look at particular modifications to what we've been working on. And any of that should come directly through the planning board as a channel. So I just wanted to make sure I'm on the record saying that. Now, having said that too, because of our time frame
And
crunch.
that's why I've been trying to make it so
Right.
we can be prepared to discuss it at our meetings.
Because of the time frame crunch and the concerns that we heard at the forum about the increase in the zone capacity in the Elliott Street corridor, I did send ahead to you
Right.
via Cheyenne, and then left it to Cheyenne whether it would be forwarded
send it out.
to
Yeah,
UTIL.
I asked to
So
send it
I
out.
just want to be clear about that. Okay.
Yep. No, I
So
think
that's how that Fairmount district was researched by UTIL. You asked the chair to send it to them?
Nope.
You lost me there.
No, you all saw that I sent.
I saw the email, yeah, and
Yeah,
I understand
that's-
I
those
asked to
That's
send
it,
it out
yeah.
to all the members, so all the members had a chance to review it.
that was like yesterday morning, and then we got it.
But I don't know if UTIL's done anything with that. I'm not sure, but
It was just
so
going to us, not UTL.
Oh, so that
it was just to it was just to us, but we can.
petition.
The draft presentation, I think,
I could have swore I saw an email where it was like, oh, there's a new zone.
That was from Cheryl.
it was a suggestion that I said I wanted to discuss tonight.
Oh, good.
At
all right.
our meeting?
I misunderstood
Yeah.
that then. That's good.
And I just wanted to give you a heads up because we're short on time
Right.
to May when we have to submit. And I left it to Cheyenne and to Meredith,
Right.
whether they would send it to UTIL, as well in advance of tonight. So they did send it, but I just wanted to, be be
Right.
clear about how that came to be because I've questioned how this, we're instructing UTIL. I just want to be clear that I had made this
Correct. I appreciate that.
request. That's all.
So Cheyenne, could you just pull up, just because I just want to be clear and make sure that what we were thinking previously for a 10% plan would be what we were still looking at, which is, or Zoe, if either one, it was the hypothetical adjacent plan.
Yes, so we have, I can pull up if it's helpful for folks to
Just the
reference.
map, yeah, just so
what
people-
we have of
the
the
public-
previous, what was shown at the public forum. And I can also give you a visual of what it would look like to look at tier 1 and just look at the parcels that are included in tier 1 of the Elliott Street corridor, if that's what would be helpful right now.
That
Which
would-
one would you like?
That would be great. If you could just show the one that we had, the hypothetical that we had previously discussed. And if anybody wants to see the alternative, we can do that too.
Pulling that up now. So I just have a timeline for reference if you want to go back to it. And then this is just the same slides that we had at the public forum. So this is the hypothetical adjacent community targets that we would be looking at. This is also the shorthand folks have been using, around 10%. Will be a 10% plan. This was premised on removing the Milton Street, the Milton Station districts, the Granite Ave South districts, and the East Milton Square district, and then a reduction of the Elliott Street corridor to focus just on the parcels that front on Elliott Street, and would result in, this is sort of the summary of that scenario that was presented at the public forum. So you can see here that it gets you to 1,001 units relative to the 985 that would be required to meet the projected target for this scenario. And then you get to 15 units per acre, and you meet all the other key targets. And that uses Granite Ave North, Mattapan Station, 711 Randolph Ave, Paper Mill, the Elliott Street corridor in that reduced form, and the Blue Hills Parkway corridor.
Thank you, Zoe. So did anyone have any comment? Because this is what we had.
Right, so can we just show
can
the
I-
maps again?
Yeah, because I think
What I was looking at was just 25.
what Zoe just referenced, okay, that one. Oh, go back one more, Zoe, back where you were, the previous
The-
one. Yeah, stay
this
there
Elliott
for a
Street
moment.
corridor.
So Cheryl, that map does not include what you had sent to us. It doesn't include the 123, but it does include this area still over here, right?
Well, what I sent was for the 25% plan, but what you can notice here is in this, the same area is removed sort of in the middle. Maybe Zoe, you can point to that, right,
Yeah.
right there. So and we can talk about that when we get to the to that discussion, but because she had this map out, I just thought I would show that here.
And what's
I missed what was the area that Zoe just indicated?
Can you circle that
This
again?
right here.
Yeah.
Seeing so that area is sort of, if you think about it, conceptually, there's the parcels that front on Elliott Street, and
Right.
then because of the station area here, we had pulled also some parcels that were within sort of a walkshed of that station.
Yep.
So what Cheryl had raised is this is an area where potentially we could kind of shave the Elliott Street corridor down a little bit and get some, reduce the overall number of units that we're showing in the Elliott Street corridor as a whole. And that might enable us to kind of distribute units a little bit more throughout the town. And that this is the sort of the geography that stands out as a portion of the Elliott Street corridor that could be reduced or removed.
So that idea was for a 25% plan
Correct.
reduction. Okay.
But I'm just pointing out that, Sean, here,
Yeah.
it's consistent with what was pulled out in this particular scenario
Yes.
as well.
And it's
Yes.
important to remember this because this is, I think, when we get to the 25%, one of the things that I'm most concerned about is the entire Cliff neighborhood is included in our 25% plan. But I just want to make a note of that. And
Well, the plan that Brian first sent, removed the part of Cliff Road and Norway rather
Right,
than this section here. So it is, if you wanted to discuss that, it's an
and if we-
alternative place. The thing when we get to that is what I was thinking is the easiest way to do and sort of apples to apples swap is to have the lot sizes be similar in the two different places. So in the new district, the lot sizes would be similar to the ones taken out, so that it's more comparable swaps.
Yeah.
Because if you have different lot sizes, then your densities and everything are not going to align.
so thank you. So this was where we were that we agreed if we were submitting a 10% plan.
Yeah.
So, okay. Just wanted to review
Yes.
that before. Okay. Thank you, Zoe. That was great. And thank you. Matthew did a great job at the forum. We should really say thank you to your team. And I thought he did a great job sort of walking everybody through and making something that's very complicated and complex. He really sort of was able to explain it nicely.
Glad to hear that. Yeah, I was very thankful to him for jumping in on my
Yeah,
behalf.
we were sorry to hear that you were so sick. Glad you're with us tonight.
Thanks.
All right, so we can now, if you want to move to sort of where we were and then Cheryl's suggestions?
Yep, can do. So this is the 25% plan for the rapid transit community designation. Same standards of 15 units per acre, but the unit capacity is much higher at 2,461. And then the other sort of parameters remain pretty similar. This is what we showed at the public forum. We, and kind of internally, before kind of hearing from the planning board regarding the sort of idea that Cheryl just made mention of, we also took kind of a closer look at some of these and thought about, in particular, you'll notice here that the Blue Hills Parkway corridor, in order to kind of hit our numbers overall, that was one of the places where we were able to make up the units that we needed to get to reach this sort of overall picture of getting just above 2,461 units and 15.71 density in this case. But as we're looking closer at it, we really, we know that for a while now, we've been trying to maintain parity between Elliott Street Corridor Tier 1, which is those smallest lot sizes within the Elliott Street Corridor, and the rule set that we're applying to Blue Hill Parkway Corridor, because there's a lot of common ground in terms of the pattern that exists in those neighborhoods currently, and so we wanted to treat them in a similar way. So we wanted to present to you a way of restoring that parity between the Elliott Street Corridor Tier 1, which is at 0.5 and 6,000 square feet minimum lot size, and regaining the same numbers for the Blue Hills Parkway Corridor, so bringing that down to 0.5 FAR instead of 0.55, which is what we had it at for the public forum, and similarly bringing it up to a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size versus the 5,000 that we were showing for the public forum. So that's sort of the agenda that we were trying to look at, how could we accommodate that? And the places that we saw an opportunity to do so was in the Milton Station District and in Randolph Ave Access Road, to create some alignment in the rule sets that we're applying in those places. And basically shift, there's a 56 unit differential that we need to be able to find in some other districts in order to regain those numbers for Blue Hills Parkway Corridor in terms of the zoning parameters that are being applied there. So I wanted to kind of offer this to the planning board, and then I can also show you the analysis we've done relative to the Cheryl's suggestion around the Elliott Street Corridor, but I wanted to at first just see how these adjustments feel, and if there are, if you share the priority of maintaining that parity between Elliott Street and Blue Hills Parkway Corridor, and if you feel like the places we've found those units are the right places to find them.
Well, I certainly believe that we should keep that parity between the Blue Hills Parkway and the Elliott Street Corridor. And I'm comfortable with the way you've distributed those.
I think the parity is important too. What's the downside to the parity? I mean, I think the upside would be that everyone would feel that there was equitable criteria, right?
Right, and the thing about the Parkway, it also has single and two families, which is what we have on the Elliott Street Corridor, so the housing stock. So why treat one differently than the other?
Is the ratio similar?
The ratio of singles to twos?
The ratio of two families to single family? Or is
I
it?
don't know.
What do you think, Zoe?
We did an analysis a little while back of a much larger geography of the housing stock that is sort of, if you go west from the Blue Hills Parkway alignment, and there was a lot more small multifamily duplexes, 3 units in that fabric, but I don't know for just the geography of the Blue Hills Parkway corridor itself, if there's a similar level of multifamily in that location. I could certainly take a look at that and kind of pull out numbers, but my sense is that broadly speaking, the Parkway corridor, I think, is more in alignment with the mix of, single family and small multifamily that you see in the Elliott Street corridor, whereas the smaller parcels that are further to the west, there's more of a presence of the small 2 and 3 unit developments.
One thing I'm going to point out about the Parkway is that there are at least two churches, if not a third, within that district. There's the Kidder Building, which is, as we know, is the child care facility now. And there's those commercial properties at the intersection with Brook. So it's different in that regard. But the single families and 2 families that are there also have a similar time frame in which they were built, some similar architectural character. And so the other thing I would say is I think there's at least 1 or 2 or 3 families next to the church, between the church and the commercial buildings at that intersection with Brook. So this doesn't have, the Parkway does not have the 3-unit or 4-unit cap. It has a density cap. So making the lot size 6,000 minimum, that's parity, but it's not parity necessarily 100% otherwise, right?
That's correct. And I would also just note that one of the other physical pattern differences is that Blue Hills Parkway has a larger front setback, and so that's also, you can see that represented in the minimum open space percentage, because that pattern is very pronounced and consistent across the corridor. And so we felt it was important to recognize that not just in the setbacks, but also in the open space percentage as a way of preserving that pattern.
And on the Parkway, we just have to remember it is a DCR road and it's a way through a park. So I appreciate the increase in the minimum open space.
So that's why I wouldn't want to go, a lot higher. So I think we all said last time that we should try and take some capacity off of the Parkway. And so I think this goes from 235 to 179. So it's at 56 if I'm
Yeah,
doing my
it's
math
a 56 unit differential that we're removing from the Blue Hills Parkway corridor by virtue of making those changes in the zoning parameters. And then we've made alterations in the zoning parameters. The ones that you see in red are the ones that have changed in the Milton Station districts and in Randolph Ave and Access Road to regain those 56 units in those 3 other districts.
So it's
So across all 3, we're gaining 56 in those other districts.
So it goes, go back to the Randolph Ave and the Access Road. When we spoke last time, we were kind of hovering around a total of 80, and now it's up to 102.
That's correct.
So I have a problem with that. And I understand the numbers have to go somewhere.
And 40 of those are a 40B.
Correct, yep.
So those are those
Yeah, it's already,
we know will be built.
Right,
So,
yep, yeah.
Yeah, part of, I know this is something I was thinking that would be one of the ones that, we should discuss as a group. But I think just to give you a picture into the logic we were using, we were looking at, 711 Randolph Ave is right across the street from the Randolph Ave and Access Road district. We had that inputted at 21 units per acre and 0.4 FAR. And so what we did is we basically took those parameters that we had plugged in for 711 Randolph and applied them to the lots that we're considering across the street, so that those 2 districts, which have very similar characteristics in terms of their location and the kinds of development that occur there, so that there's a matching of those parameters. That being said, it does mean that there's 20 additional units that are possible within the Randolph Ave and Access Road district. So that's not that is an impact that is worth discussing. But that's kind of the logic that we were using to get to that number.
But it's still less than half the density of the Mattapan Station, the Milton Station East and West, and the bridge. So again, all of the larger districts or the higher density districts that are within the half mile are at 45 to 47 to 51 at Granite Ave North. So this is less than half of that. still at 21, so it seems to me.
But the likelihood of it being built is pretty high at Randolph Ave. That's what bothers me about it.
And it's not close to any subway.
Well, that's another thing.
And, again, it's the deadliest road on down the street from the deadliest intersection. We already have, 40Bs there. There's a likelihood of 2 more developments coming at the corner of Randolph and Reedsdale on, within the next, year or two. So we're putting a lot of activity on the lower end of Randolph Ave where it does not meet, transit-oriented development.
But we said we've been consistent since day one, I think, of this, is that we've had, when HLC gave the opportunity to put half of the zone capacity outside of the half a mile, that there was a lot of resident interest in taking advantage of that and spreading some of the zone capacity out. We've shifted a lot of more zone capacity into the Elliott Street corridor. We've taken everything out of East Milton. It's got to go somewhere, and no more of it should go in the Elliott Street corridor. When we've studied other locations and they've been ruled out, and I think Randolph Ave, for all the time we keep coming back to because it works, there's a bus line, it's a 4-lane roadway. There are some amenities there, not none, but, Newcomb's, Eagle, there are some. They're not great walking conditions, I agree. However, it's just too much to put into an area which is a 2-lane winding road, which is a lot different character. And we heard residents speak about that at numerous planning board meetings and at the public forum. So I'm all for keeping the Randolph Ave sites in and at this density.
Yeah, and to keep it simple, I'm not for it.
I think it's not even comparable in terms of amenities. I mean, no one feels comfortable walking Randolph Ave. No one does. The speed on that road is too high, and most people aren't walking. I mean, I like everything that exists as a business on Randolph Ave, but I don't really consider it the kind of amenity that people want to be able to walk to. Walking over to a food store, or to what's available down on Central, is the kind of amenities that I think people like. Randolph Ave is changing immensely. I understand what you're saying, that, this idea that half of it be dispersed around the town, but you just look at what's happening in Randolph Ave and what's going to continue to happen. You mentioned what's likely going to come, for a proposal for even more development up by, up at the intersection of Pleasant and Randolph. But it's changed immensely.
Well, I would say then we're back to East Milton Square, because we have all the walkable amenities right there within the square. And it would be, I think there was 300 and some units swapped out there. This would be 232. So maybe there's some dimensional requirement or shifts that could happen there and get the 232 in East Milton Square.
I don't think you can do it. I mean, you get 92 units under construction right now.
So that counts. That counts towards the 232.
Yeah, it's East Milton is going to be, it'll be intolerable with traffic. It already is. And you add those 90 units in there plus the 440 project.
And I think we're back to Randolph Ave.
Yeah, the intent from the very beginning was to put development on transit, and the transit is the trolley. That is the transit that is most
Commuter
likely
line.
to be utilized. And what's
Well,
that?
in the
And the commuter
No,
line.
you all have advocated that that the trolley is not a subway, and that we should be looking
It
at
isn't a
commuter
subway.
rail.
Yeah.
And now you've taken everything away from the commuter rail except Blue Hills Parkway, rather. This wasn't what was presented to the public at the forum last week, that you now want to put everything in the Elliott Street corridor on a 25% plan. Is that what you're advocating tonight?
I'm not sure who you is. Is you?
I meant members of this board have stated
I
numerous
have
times
not.
that the trolley is not a subway.
It's not.
And that we need to be compliant with commuter rail.
Right, and
So to
wherever
put
this-
all of the zone
wherever-
capacity in the Elliott Street corridor is counter.
I don't think
to
that's
that
what you're
position.
saying. I don't think that's necessarily what you're saying, but
You have to have a swap for the Randolph Ave if you're
I
taking
think we
them
should
off of
put a
there.
pin in this and come back to this, because I think this just goes to show what we go around with is we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and we're being asked to do something that Milton just does not have the land and the districts to do. We've come up with more districts than any other community that Matthew and Zoe have worked with, and JT, and we've looked at every combination possible and turned over and examined every lot. So I hear what you're saying, and I hear what all of you are saying. But maybe for time's sake, we should go, and if there's anything else.
Yeah, I can present we also did an analysis, sort of not exactly what Cheryl described, but very close. And I can show you what that looks like. And we've combined it with this set of recommendations. So what we did is we treated this, what you're seeing on the screen now, as a new like baseline. And then from there, we made adjustments to the Elliott Street corridor to shift units away from the Elliott Street corridor and add some units in the commuter rail station area, specifically the Fairmount one. So this is the markup that Cheryl had shared with us to kind of illustrate the idea that she sort of had put together based on the public comment that was received. So you can see the markup here. We've taken the geography that you're seeing on the right, which is to orient you. This is near the Fairmount Station area. This is sort of the slightly smaller parcels that are a more direct match for the parcel sizes that you can observe in the Elliott Street corridor, outlined in blue on the right. And then on the left, the red markup is a suggested approach to shaping the Elliott Street corridor down a little bit in response to that public comment. So what we did is we took a focused area here close to the Valley Road stop and applied the sort of rule of, we will only include parcels that front on Elliott Street. In other words, they have a part of their lot line is on Elliott Street. All parcels that don't have that are removed if it's south of Elliott Street. We left this set of parcels in because from a kind of, if you zoom out, a larger planning logic, I don't think we can defend a choice to exclude a specific subset of these parcels because they share so many traits with the parcels that are immediately adjacent to them. Whereas this is a clear rule that we can have, we can represent very clearly and argue for with a specific planning logic. So that's why we moved forward with that. And what we did is we took those out, but we kept all the same rules for Elliott Street. And then we applied those same rules to the new district that is in the Fairmount Station area. So this is a summary of that. Just for the sake of space and fitting everything on the same slide, if you can imagine, this Fairmount Station district itself has 3 tiers, just like Elliott Street corridor. That has the same exact rules that you're seeing for Elliott Street corridor, but we're just reporting them in aggregate so that you can see this all on one slide. So all those Elliott Street corridor numbers are maintained with the FARs, the units per lot, and the minimum lot size rules that we've been working with since the end of 2024. And then Blue Hills Parkway corridor is maintained at the same 0.5 FAR, 6,000 square foot minimum lot size as Elliott Street corridor tier 1. And then we were able to, with the same rule set as Elliott Street corridor, get to 185 units in this new Fairmount Station district. And that comes to a density across the whole district of 11.8. And if you filter that through to the overall numbers, you get to 2,524. So a little bit of a surplus of units relative to the 2,461 that you need to reach. And then density is at 15.3. So again, a little bit of a margin above the 15 units per acre that you need to reach. So there's a little bit of room to play here in terms of, shaving off a few units here or there. For instance, maybe we could, bring Randolph Ave and Access Road back down a little bit in this case. So that's kind of you take the two ideas, the ideas that sort of UTL had brought forward around restoring parity between Elliott Street and Blue Hills, and then you add that in with the ideas around shaving down Elliott Street corridor and adding a new Fairmount Station district. This is where you land with that.
Okay. Any comments?
So I do have a sense of what.
I'm just curious how you picked this area, or I mean, obviously Fairmont, but
Well, how I picked it was just trying to
pressure.
when looking at Fairmount, if you go to back to that slide where I had marked it up, I was looking, as Zoe said, at lot sizes that seemed comparable to the lot sizes in the Elliott Street corridor. So there are some here that are larger, and I thought that would not help our numbers properly because it would drop our density down. But if we could swap comparable sized lots, that's still within the general boundary of the Fairmount one. So that the orange and the blue lines. But what's just off of this image is the paper mill site. So the paper mill site is just towards the top of that image on the right.
Yeah, it's essentially right here.
Yeah,
That's
right
the
there.
access drive to get to it.
So I thought connecting sort of the districts that way and just picking up the comparable sized lots and seeing how many that would be. And then finding a comparable section of the Elliott Street corridor. It seemed to me that what UTIL had pulled out for the adjacent community, had this area, roughly this area, from what I could tell. So that was a good place to start. But the idea really was just to take into consideration the comments from folks from the Elliott Street corridor about the concern for the increased density and seeing if we couldn't add a district at Fairmount.
So you're proposing both inside the blue and inside the orange, both?
No, just inside the blue.
Just inside the blue, no orange.
The no orange. I mean, yeah, the no orange. The orange one goes away. It was just for reference to compare the two.
And Zoe, can you blow up and just increase the size of the?
Can't see.
I'd like to take a close look at the Elliott Street area that we're peeling off. Can you?
Yeah. So do you want to see the markup that Cheryl had shared, or what we ultimately ended up removing?
I think theirs.
Yeah, what you ended up removing, please.
So this is the Elliott Street corridor here, and then you can kind of see, this is one parcel depth that we're grabbing, and then anytime you get to that second parcel, a parcel that does not front on Elliott, that's removed.
Okay.
That's south of Elliott Street corridor. This triangle parcel is maintained in order to kind of keep that continuity. And you can see that it's a very consistent parcel depth for kind of the remainder of this section there.
So my only comment on this is Valley Road and Avalon Road have a lot of two families on them that currently exist. Oak Road really doesn't, but
So Zoe, did you think that there's another part of the Elliott Street corridor that would be an alternative to this to get a removal of approximately the same number?
I didn't look into that in greater detail. I think if you were to kind of take this, if I zoom back out again, if you look at the shape of the Elliott Street corridor, the logic in most cases is we're just taking that first parcel. So you can see that's the logic all the way through here, all the way through here. In some cases, we've taken a second parcel where it turns the corner and is consistent with the sort of depth of a parcel next to it to sort of maintain that sort of a similar form. And then we're carrying that in this scenario all the way across here. The only place where we break that logic is where we get close to Central Ave. And that I think is a reasonable logic because this has, an existing concentration of amenities. It's a very logical place to have small multifamily units. And so I would argue for retention of that from a broader planning perspective in terms of where it's
Agree.
best to retain multifamily and zone for multifamily. I think as we go kind of in this direction, right, this part of, where the access to the Blue Hills commuter rail station, the Mattapan station, and Capon Street all converge, that has a very rich transit access. So while it has fewer amenities in terms of like commercial hubs, I think there is also an argument to be made for this area having increased capacity for multifamily. And given the size of these and the rule sets we have, I think this is a place where you are more likely to see the solution of 2 duplexes, a retention of whatever home exists in the front, and maybe an addition of a rear, like 2-unit. Essentially presenting as if it was a large garage in the rear of a lot. So I think there's a kind of a typology of development that makes sense for this neighborhood that's possible to achieve without tear downs selectively as property owners want to pursue it. So I think I'm comfortable with this as the area that is chosen to remove because it has, when you look at that big picture of like the level of transit access that's argues for the Blue Hills Parkway and Mattapan Capon Street neighborhoods, a level of amenities at Central Ave, I think those both argue for those 2 poles of the corridor having multifamily zoning. And I think the argument's a little weaker in the middle because there isn't as much of a concentration of those amenities and you don't have the same level of transit access with fewer options. But
Where are you referring to that you don't have that?
this area in the center where we've removed parcels, I think it's absolutely, there's, as you had pointed out, there's existing multifamily there. But in terms of where to encourage increased development, I think from a planning perspective, thinking about where I would put multifamily housing, I would put it in places that have many transit options, rich access to the commercial hub that exists just over the line on Boston side, and access to those commercial amenities, on the, within the town of Milton for Central Ave. So I would just kind of argue for like a barbell approach making sense from a big picture planning perspective.
Can I just also mention one other thing? We had the way that we had increased the zone capacity in this area was by lowering the minimum lot size and allowing 4 units on parcels 10,000 square feet or larger, right? But what that also allowed for was a slightly lesser density at other districts, right? So that was the trade-off. So not needing to have a district that was going to have buildings or a district like Granite Ave South, right? Because we heard a lot of people's concerns about a district of that scale. And so the idea was to use the same land area and be able to get a little bit more density within that land area so that we don't need quite as much to make up in some other district, right? So Zoe, I don't know if I've said that in a way that makes sense to you, or I'm trying to help people who might be watching understand the logic. Because if we just went with everything we have right now, and if we went back and raised the minimum lot size, now we'd be looking at shifting our density outside of the 15 units an acre with the other districts that we have. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Essentially, one of the tensions that, Milton has had since the beginning of us, starting to explore this with you is that in order to meet your acreage and contiguity and station area obligations, there is really just about no way that we found that's a viable approach that does not include the Elliott Street corridor in some capacity. And so once that is at play, it's the Elliott Street corridor has throughout our entire planning process been the lowest density set of districts, or the tiers within it. They're the lowest density across all of the zoned areas. And that means that in order to carry that low density district, you need other districts that are at a higher density to get it all to average out to at least 15. And so what you're describing, Cheryl, is correct in that by getting the Elliott Street corridor to be a little bit denser, as dense as is comfortable and viable, that enables us to zone in other areas of town in a way that does not kind of blow those density numbers out of the water. We can bring them a little bit more in line with the patterns and the expectations in those areas because we've gained a little bit in Elliott Street corridor, and so we're not carrying such a drag on our density numbers for the rest of the town.
But at this point, if we said, instead of removing parcels, we said, okay, we're going to raise the minimum lot size now, then we'd be looking at needing to add density on the other sites that we have, right?
Correct, yes. If you have a lower density in the Elliott Street corridor, it's not just a matter of making up the same number of units, you have to make up the density, and that generally results in zoning for more units overall than what you would have to zone for otherwise. In other words, you have to go well above the 2,461 units that are required of you because the density, you're not.
Oh, we lost Zoe.
We just lost the sound, Zoe. The last.
That's strange.
So what I'm hearing is the lot size.
There,
Now she's
you're
back.
back. Okay.
You're back?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just muted for a minute.
Okay. We have two-way communications. Success.
Yeah, so that is why that I had suggested a way to remove some of the zone capacity in the Elliott Street corridor is not to change the minimum lot size or the number of units on the larger parcels, but to remove parcels so that we don't have to increase the density on the other districts. But we can swap it out for a district that has the same exact parameters that's within walking distance of the commuter rail.
What about looking at to the left of Blue Hill Parkway? I feel like we discussed this at one point, like the Brush Hill Road, Blue Hill Ave, Austin,
Yeah.
Brook
We did
Road.
look into that. At the time, we looked at a larger geography, of kind of essentially a wedge, kind of from Blue Hills Parkway through to Brush Hill Road. The challenge there was that, like Elliott Street, but even more so, the lot sizes are quite small. And so basically, unless you go down to 5,000 square foot lots and allow 3 units on 5,000 square foot lots, so many parcels are excluded that your density numbers are extremely low because essentially the majority of the parcels in that area, you would not be allowing development. So that's kind of, it essentially was an issue of parcel size that unless the board is willing to zone for a higher density on smaller lot sizes, that area of town just does not make sense to zone because you're not going to get to 3 units per lot on enough parcels to be able to carry a density that can contribute meaningfully to your overall compliance.
So again, I do feel like that area of town has a lot of two families.
So I was just going to say that I drove around today. I spent a lot of time in my car driving through all of the Belcher Circle neighborhood and through this neighborhood. And I was thinking that same thing because although they're small lots, the structures are quite large. And so they could accommodate, and many of them are already 2 families. So I think they could accommodate. So I think I would be curious for the board, but I would be willing to go lower on the lot size. And maybe this is another sub-district, but include that area where we do have large structures on very small lots, but that could accommodate 3 units, I believe.
I will just say that to date, we have maintained an open space percentage of 40%, and we have consistently not gone below 6,000 square feet as a minimum lot size. You are correct that the development pattern in much of that area is tighter. There are a lot of buildings that are sitting on quite small lots. There is very little open space on those lots. And so in order to allow for 3 units on that lots, because if you don't get to 3 units, it does not contribute towards your compliance numbers. Duplex isn't enough. You would be looking at conversions of existing duplexes to 3-unit buildings on parcels that cannot accommodate 40% open space. So I think it's a bit of a values question back to the board of, if you're okay with that kind of development in that location, why is that not acceptable along Elliott Street? Because there's many properties along Elliott Street that have a similar building type. Those smaller 5,000 square foot lots are also present all throughout Elliott Street quarter. They're just not every lot, but they're distributed all throughout, and many of them do have duplexes on them already. So they aren't so different. And so I think it's a little bit
Yeah, we would want to be
of
consistent.
an issue.
Do you know what is the typical open space area that currently exists? Because I think we would want to look at what actually currently exists.
Are you all
space?
opposed to having a district that's within a half mile of the commuter rail station at Fairmount?
No, I just think it's unnecessary to tear up a whole nother neighborhood.
It's by the letter of the law within a half mile of the commuter rail station,
No, I
just like
understand that,
Elliott's,
Cheryl. I understand
just
that,
like
but
the
it's
Blue Hills
tearing up-
Parkway.
It's tearing up a whole nother neighborhood. It's just putting a
That's
whole
not
nother
different
neighborhood.
from the Blue Hills Parkway neighborhood that
Why
we're
is the
talking
Blue Hills
about right
Parkway
now.
exactly? Why is the Parkway sacrificial and
not
not
saying it's
at
sacrificial. We've
Fairmount?
been
Or why
looking
is
at
the
it.
Elliott Street sacrificial in
Can
your
I-
mind instead of
So
Fairmount?
we've been looking at the Blue Hills area for all this time, since inception almost.
I asked Tim before Tim left to look at this area.
And they have looked at it, and they've come back with reasons why it wasn't recommended.
Can I just maybe go back to the Fairmount then? Because just in driving around, and I think this was mentioned in another commuter station, is it's not direct access to, although it's within a half mile.
Half mile is the crow
It's within
flies.
a,
That's right.
but all
You
the,
can walk to the Fairmount station.
you can't walk through but you have to walk around. You're not going to walk through those backyards directly. When you drive through, it's very difficult to get access directly to the
I've
Fairmount
spoken
station.
to people who live on Smith Street who say that they walk.
Yeah, but how
So-
far is it? Is it half a mile walking distance or half a
It's
mile
the
as
same
the crow
criteria
flies?
as any other of these. So is it safe to
It
walk
seems
down
easier
Blue
to
Hill
walk.
Ave and get to Mattapan Station, like we've talked about
No,
that?
but it's pretty
So-
safe
yeah.
to go from Valley Road to Valley Road T-stop.
You're not willing to consider the concerns of people who spoke at the forum on the Elliott Street corridor. You're only interested in hearing from the people who live near the commuter rail stations, are you? Because
No, Cheryl, I'm actually
nope,
interested in
you're
looking
not
at different
talking about
areas.
any place except along the Elliott Street corridor.
I think
No.
I think the concerns of every neighborhood is relevant. I think the Elliott Street neighbors' concerns are relevant, just as much as the folks in East Milton on Granite Ave, the folks over in the 2 gentlemen that were talking about, their concerns with Reedville. They all are. When Matt Littell spoke last week, and he did a great job presenting, that point that he made, I think is such a relevant point. He said that we have 14 districts, and he happened to say more districts than any other town that Util has worked for. That is an indicator of how inapplicable 25% is to the town of Milton. That's what that's indicative of. It's impossible. We're making so many people, struggle with this because no one's going to be happy. No one. I hear you, Cheryl, and Fairmount. I don't, I can see some reasoning where Fairmount's relative, but we're trying to make similar arguments. We're saying, I think Zoe said earlier that area that's in orange up there is not proximate to amenities. It's not that far away. I mean, if Fairmount is proximate, then so is that. Some of these arguments, you can't say that, that is, I think that's Valley. I think it's Oak. I'm trying to figure out what streets those are, but
Avalon.
Avalon. You can't say that those are too far away, but that neighborhood on Fairmount isn't too far away. I mean, some of these.
Just to briefly clarify, I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is that if you're going to remove parcels from Elliott Street corridor, those are the parcels that have the least. If you combine transit access and commercial amenity access, those are the parcels that have the least of those two qualities. But if you compare it to Fairmount, as you're describing, you're right, it doesn't compare. This has direct walkable access to the trolley.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally see that. And, and that distinction, Zoe, on the sacrifice of this area, it's really small. I mean, it's not that much further away. I stand by, this is just a belief I have, the half mile, regardless of what town it is in what it is to, a ferry terminal, a bus station, that's just a measure. It's not the limit of how far people will walk. People will walk a mile. You'll walk 3/4 of a mile. So I don't get too wrapped up in it's more than a half mile distance to wherever you're going to go. That was not what they had in mind. They just picked a distance, and that was it. So I don't for a moment think that people are only going to walk a half mile to get to transit. That's not really, I think, a criteria that we should really think about. But I guess back to my point, it's just so hard to come up with a 25% plan that someone is not going to feel that they were disadvantaged, no matter where it is. So I don't like any of it. We're in a really tough spot, and there are things that would be more preferable to you. There are things that would be more preferable to Jim. There are things that would be more preferable to Maggie. There's things that are more preferable to me, and the same with Meredith. And we're in a box. We're in a box.
But we're left with a few weeks left before we have to submit something to town meeting.
Yeah.
I think we've looked at so many districts. I think Zoe and team have run us through so many, and a lot of them we found that didn't meet the requirements, whether it was because it was too much land area, it dropped the density down, or it was so much land area that it raised the amount of zone capacity much higher than we're required to. So I think, it's useful to come back or think a little bit about how we have arrived at where we are. And, if there's some way to accommodate some of the concerns that we heard with this 25% plan. I mean, otherwise, we don't have too much time to have wholesale changes. I mean, I kind of see this as a refinement, but maybe Zoe, do you see this as more than a refinement?
I think, frankly, we've been working on refinements. I would say since 2023, but I am going to pull back up the analysis that we did for the Blue Hills area long time ago. I think this was probably 6 months into our work together, and now we're kind of approaching the 2-year mark. So I'm going to pull that up so that people can see there is a specific dimensional technical reason why we ultimately decided not to move forward with it in conversation with you all. And I agree this is a challenging, the interaction of where your transit area is and the patterns that you have in those areas is challenging. And I think that we are collectively getting to a place that is a really good plan for Milton to be able to meet that 25%, in a way that is aligning as closely as possible with where you can actually support that kind of multifamily housing and keep in line as much as possible with the patterns that you have. So this is the geography we've studied before. It included, this was in complement with the Blue Hills Parkway corridor, which is its own district with its own parameters. So you can see that as kind of a cutout here. That's the kind of the imprint of the Blue Hills Parkway corridor that we have retained as a district that does have, is contributing to your overall compliance picture. We then, with this geography specifically, looked at the parcel sizes. And you can see here that this is where the 5,000 square foot line is. So even if we were to go down to 5,000 square feet and say, we allow development on 5,000 square feet, you can build 3 units on 5,000 square feet, we would be excluding, I don't know the exact number here because I don't have it listed, but visually you can see it's approaching half. We would still be excluding half of the parcels in the Blue Hills Parkway corridor area geography that I was just showing, the sort of fanning out to the west from the Blue Hills Parkway corridor, which means that even if you set the 5,000 square foot minimum lot size, which would be the lowest minimum lot size that we have studied for the entire duration of this effort together, you would still have struggles meeting even the densities that we're showing in Elliott Street corridor because so many parcels would still be excluded and would not be developable under these rules. And so that's why it just at a parcel level is not well aligned with what you are being required to do by the state. It's not able to contribute in the way that you need. It has a great pattern currently that is very dense. It functions well. It's a mixture of duplex and triplex and single family. But it doesn't mean that just because that pattern's there already does not mean that that pattern aligns with the future development that you want to allow under this set of regulations that is being required by the state. It just doesn't line up right.
Well, what if we included this with the 5,000 minimum lot size, and we could offset some of Elliott Street?
You would need to find another district. You would need to add density to other districts outside of the Elliott Street corridor to make up for swapping an Elliott Street corridor area, let's say, for a lower density Blue Hills area, because it will end up being lower density because of the number of lots that are excluded.
Even if it's 3 units for,
Yeah, because this graph here, so in for the Elliott Street corridor, there are very few parcels that are less than 5,000 square feet, but there are many that are about 5,000. But what you're seeing here is that for Blue Hills Parkway corridor, the majority of parcels are under that number. So it's 5,000 even is not enough to capture the majority of the parcels that you need to capture. You need to go even lower than that.
So I think it's very helpful to remember that that land area counts even though you get no zone capacity out of it. So that's
part of
why
what drags.
why the density is dropping.
Density denominator, right? It drives it up.
Zoe, are your columns, what's the increment? Is it 500 feet? Or is it?
Yep, 500 square feet. So each like vertical bucket that you're seeing is a 500 square foot increment.
Sure. So it changes dramatically if you went to 4,500 square feet, right?
Yes. Yeah. But again, I would just say that if we have said that 6,000 square feet is the floor for Elliott Street corridor.
Yeah.
You can't build 3 units on something that is less than 6,000 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the argument holds water that the rules should be different for the Blue Hills area.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just mention that that's an area which has our highest level of socioeconomic and racial diversity, as well as more renters than owners. And I think we have to be mindful of that when making these decisions.
See, and that's the very reason why we should do it, because we're giving them an economic opportunity. That's what I've been saying. So you can look at, 7-Eleven Randolph Ave or 2 Granite Ave. I disagree with your logic a little bit, Zoe, because those buildings at 2 Granite is completely different than Elliott. So in certain districts, the rule set does change. And I believe that we should be giving our own residents an opportunity and not giving it to an outside developer. And we know what has also changed is the ADU bylaw. So now these residents in this neighborhood will be able to put in an ADU and it will become dense. It'll become more dense than what it is.
The one thing I would say is that when we looked at how you could fit a 3-unit building and 3 parking spaces, you might have 0 open space if you keep ratcheting down below 5,000 square feet. And I personally don't think that's, and I agree with Zoe that if the Elliott Street corridor, if we set parameters there where it's single families and 2 families and so forth, why are we going to say in another place having a minimum open space is not a requirement? Open space is important for every one of these.
I'm a huge,
I know. But I just don't think it's going to fit. See, we did these test fits before, and it doesn't fit.
What I do hear, what would be a concern is the parking situation on
parking and open space.
And open space. But what I guess I'm just looking at is consistency with the type of housing stock that already exists.
Yes.
So that you're utilizing already existing multifamilies, and they tend to be very large. That's why I was just curious on maybe what a typical open space, and I'm sure you could take sort of a street and get an average of what currently exists there, Zoe. I don't know if you can do that, and sort of, I think we've done that in other locations, but to look at what kind of open space, not that, because if it's already existing there, as 30% open space or 20%, I don't know exactly what's there. I do worry about parking.
A study, this is not of the Blue Hills area that we were just looking at, but this was a study that we did back in 2023 for the Elliott Street corridor, looking at the 5,000 square foot lots. So this shows you what's possible on a 5,000 square foot lot. And you can see that at 1 parking space per unit, the only, and maintaining setbacks that are consistent with, the current built patterns, almost the entirety of the parcel is setback, parking, or building. There's not really a yard to discuss. And this is a pattern that is present, already to some extent, in both the Elliott Street corridor and the Blue Hills area. The open space does drop a little bit below the 40%, not by a lot, but a little bit. And you can see that there's really, it's tight site planning, and much of the, in the Blue Hills area, the setbacks we're showing here are consistent with what is present for the sort of the norms in the Elliott Street corridor area that we were looking at. I can't vouch for whether that is analogous in the Blue Hills Parkway area, because we did not look at that level of detail there. But I do just, this is, it does drop below the 40%. And this is extremely efficient site planning on a regular site. Most sites are irregular and will not be able to accommodate this perfect geometry. So it will start to eat into the open space numbers. It may be consistent with some of the development that is there now. And I struggle to come up with an argument for why that is not viable on the Elliott Street corridor and is viable in the Blue Hills area. I think this is appropriate. I think this is possible and appropriate in both locations. But I'm not comfortable saying it is appropriate in one location and not the other.
Yeah, so Elliott Street, so I know right on Elliott Street, I agree with you. But when you go off of Elliott Street on either side, you have a lot more, typically you would have properties with a lot more open space, which exists now. So in just thinking about, we talk about, we don't want to see a tear down. We're trying to find ways to see this sort of fit in with existing sort of the character of the neighborhoods. There is a lot more open space. I understand right on Elliott Street, there's some large buildings right on very tight lots. But when you go off of that, it's very, very different. So to say the all Elliott Street corridor, there's a lot more open space.
I think what
naturally
she's
open
demonstrating is that even on a 5,000 square foot lot, it's to get the 3 parking spaces and and that's just a footprint of 1,000 square feet, I think. I'm looking right now on Austin Street, for example, which runs between Blue Hills Parkway and Blue Hill Ave. There's some lots that are 38 feet wide, 50 feet wide. So like there's these lots that are 38 feet wide have a shared driveway between 2 lots. And so when you're looking at, like a 3,000 square foot parcel, for example, I think if you spent time, as you said, you were looking at, there's some even on Brush Hill Road there's one that's 21 feet wide and 34 feet wide. It's just, you're not going to have opportunities with those for sure. We've looked at these before. I thought we were getting close to deciding what we were going to submit. It seems like we're just going back and
triggered
retreating.
with the change of the Elliott Street corridor. I think we were thinking.
Well, I thought
I'm thinking how we can take off Elliott Street corridor and find
So
another location.
Do you not like adding a
This
Fairmount
isn't-
station then?
This isn't bad to go back and look at this because it's so long since we looked at it. I think Zoe, did something here that was appropriate. We're talking about size of lots. We should go back and look at it. It's very helpful to go back and look at this now. I don't know. I'm still, I'm not. I don't know which is better. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to Fairmount at all. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to taking that section out of Elliott Street. But I think as we get closer to having to make a decision, it's good to go back and reevaluate some of the things that we've looked at in the past.
Yeah.
And Maggie made a point earlier that I think that, there'll be some people that have a 5,000 square foot lot that'll be disappointed that 6,000 square feet was the smallest lot. They will be disadvantaged because their property value, because of 1,000 square foot change that we set it at 6,000 square feet. You're a guy who works in that world. You'd probably love to have the 6,000 square foot lot so you could redevelop it. I don't see it as, I have to look at it as it increases the value of property if you happen to be included within this area.
Possibly.
Now, it certainly is. It certainly is. It's not, I don't see it as that much of a disadvantage. Now, there might be some people that live on a 6,000 square foot lot and say, you know what, I don't care about the value of my property. I love it the way it is, and I hope none of my neighbors change any of this. But there will be some that are sitting on 6,000 feet or 10,000 feet or whatever dimension that can be redeveloped, and they're going to be very happy because it's an opportunity to change and increase the value of their property that is only a result of the MBTA Communities Act.
All right, so we've heard from many people who are very concerned about changes in their neighborhoods. And dropping it even to 5,000, we know is going to be even a higher increase in the zone capacity that we know people already have concerns about. So I'm concerned about us talking about parameters that we have already said for a very long time that we've moved past. Because I feel like we're just going around in circles so that we will not have a compliant plan anywhere close to being ready.
Cheryl, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. I mean, whatever your thoughts on what I say, you can have whatever thoughts you have. That's not the reason I'm talking about this. You know, we're trying to get settled on a plan. I don't think it's wrong to have this conversation, to have this discussion, to look at these. It's not. I know where we have to be, and this is helpful to me, and hopefully it's helpful to the residents that we're still talking about it. We're still considering these things as we have to make our final decisions.
So Zoe, how much time do you need to get us to a place in? I think it's 2 weeks that we have.
We have, mid.
So right now we're working towards the town meeting on the 16th in June, which means having at least a month of warrant period, which backs up to just by numbers to May 16th. It may, for functional reasons, need to be a little bit before that based on the meeting schedule of planning board and select board. So that warrant needs to include not just the numbers that we're looking at, but the actual zoning. The zoning needs to be written. Right now, the zoning that you have is the zoning that was written for the 2023 warrant. You need some time, the town staff needs some time to be able to update that zoning framework to be sufficiently resolved, polished, cross-referenced zoning that can go before the town for a town meeting. So we cannot keep tweaking numbers right up until the end because we do have to allow time for the zoning itself to be drafted and reviewed as a written document.
And Nick did send that out to us today, the template that was used. Basically, it's using the same template that Tim had used, but just putting in the new districts and plugging in the.
So Zoe, your schedule here, we had penciled in a meeting next week for the 30th. Was that one that your team is unavailable for?
Let me take a look. Right now, I do not have an evening commitment on the 30th, and it looks like Matthew does not either, so I think we would be able to join you.
Yeah, that would be great. We have it already on the agenda for discussion for MBTA.
So what's the reason? I just want to get an understanding.
And then I just want to allow time for people who want to speak.
I just want to get an understanding of what time we really have and what they can get done and how much more they can look at. Because we can talk about hypotheticals, but if we don't have enough time, I think we need to use the time that we have to the best that we can. So, Zoe.
I think we need, for most revisions, we're going to need 3 days for us to work through all the details, make sure that we haven't, missed a formula in a cell, that kind of thing. And that lines up roughly with, we can move at a faster pace than meeting so let's say we meet with you once a week. We can turn around revisions in that time frame, but we can turn around 2 cycles of revisions in that time frame potentially. But we do need to at some point pencils down so that it can convert to drafting the zoning. And so I think there's no hard rule line in the sand about where that is, but I would say that next week we need to get to clarity on, we can do some final tweaks that are very clear prescribed tweaks, not exploring multiple options. We want to do this, just follow through on it. But I think next week should be the cutoff of exploring hypothetical alternatives and trade-offs between districts. I think we need to get to a point where we have one last request and we go ahead and we implement that change.
So you've said that you think, based on what your 2 years of working on this, you think the Blue Hills Parkway area is going to drive the density down such that you have to increase the density in the other districts. So are folks comfortable with increasing, before they go do this, are we comfortable with increasing the density in any of the other districts in order to include the Blue Hills Parkway?
Which parkway area are you talking about now?
But
One
you
that
were
we were
just
just, the
talking about.
The
triplex
triplex?
area.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess I would be just curious to know how many, what density level we would have to increase those to? Like how far? Are we just talking a slight incremental, or is it a real dramatic increase?
And
Maybe
how
that's
much
something we
effort
could
is that, Zoe, to determine? So could you do the two scenarios, like the scenario that I suggested, run that through a little bit more in the Fairmount, and to do the Blue Hills Parkway as an alternative to it
And with
for next week?
and the goal is just to alleviate Elliott Street from Oak Valley and Avalon. Just take this little parcel out. That's why we're going through this whole exercise.
It's to decrease some of the zone capacity there without having to increase it on the other districts. So it's a swap. The idea is to swap it in land area out without having to do an increased density somewhere.
I understand that.
Just-
and
yeah.
the drive was, I'm still trying to figure out where the drive came from, because we all felt that there's too much on Elliott Street, or you felt that it was, so you looked
We
at
heard
Fairmount?
comments. We heard comments at the public hearing from people, and we received an email, at least one email from a resident
I received that email.
in the Elliott Street corridor
Yeah.
who's concerned about the increased zone capacity in the Elliott Street corridor. So, and at least one person at the meeting last week, we received another email, a comment about spreading some of it out. Someone who lives on Capon Street, actually two people
It
live
may
on
spread
Capon
it out a
Street.
little bit further.
So they
which
wanted
is-
some
But I
spread
also
out.
heard
Looking
people
at-
before him say that it was a great plan, and they liked what we've done, and they liked our work, and they appreciated it. So
I
I
would
wonder
just be
why we're-
curious to see.
if we're
yeah.
not going to go, if we're worried about running out of time, and now we're looking at new districts. I'm just wondering, what's the gain here? That's all. And that's it. I sort
see
of thought
how
it was good
quickly.
before.
So, and also to someone's point about staying with the 6,000 square foot lot size, that suggestion came from Elliott Street residents. Now, perhaps the residents over on the Blue Hill Ave, Austin, they're comfortable with the 4,000, because if you looked at Zoe's bar graph there, it was the 5,000, then 45, then 4,000. We would capture a lot in the if we reduced it to 4,000.
Well,
So
we would have no time to ask them what they think about it.
Correct.
Or if they
So
come,
they would
or
have
if they
no
hear about
public-
this and come to the next meeting, and we get
We could
5
reach out
residents
to
that say
them.
they want it, and 5 residents that
I'll
say they
just-
don't. What do we do?
I'm going to jump in real quick just to address, because I do have some analysis that we did back in 2023 on the Blue Hills area. It was analyzing the geography we were looking at before, but that is two-family fabric. That is not.
Oops,
Oh, we just lost your
again.
sound.
Sorry, Zoe, we lost you at 2,000 fabric. Oh, we still lost it. Oh, no.
Two-family fabric. What does that mean?
3% of the parcels.
Oh, wait, we just got you back.
Sorry, you're going to have
Could
to
you
repeat the whole thing.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. We lost you at two-family fabric.
Fabric.
Okay, so the Blue Hills area, the triangle area that we're looking at here, this is two-family fabric. The development density that you're seeing on those parcels and the size of those parcels is driven by the fact that they were subdivided in order to build two families. That is clear because when you look at the parcel counts of the 565 parcels analyzed in this area, 7 of those are 3 families. That's 1% of the parcels. 191 are 2 families. That's 34% of the parcel. 339 are single family. That's 60% of the parcels. So yes, there is multifamily here. Yes, the pattern is tighter, but that does not mean that it is ready for 3 family units at this level of density on this size of parcels with this consistency of that small parcel size. That is very different from what we've been looking at elsewhere. And so I don't think it's just a matter of what residents in that area are comfortable with. I think it is a matter of thinking about whether allowing 3 units on parcels of this scale consistently across a whole area that has that small parcel fabric does not have the same diversity of parcel size that we see elsewhere on Elliott Street corridor. If that's something that increase in density, which is basically saying a third increase across lots of small parcels, each of which has very limited open space, very few amenities. I don't think you need to ask residents about that. I don't think that is strong planning logic.
So we can ask a question. The numbers that you just referenced, that's the entire area that you're showing on the screen right now?
Correct.
Would you mind just going back over those numbers again so everybody hears that, not only us, but the public?
Yep. So looking at the parcels that we're seeing on the screen right now, that's 565 parcels. Of those parcels, 7 of them have 3-family units currently. That's 1%. And this is using the state parcel data, so there might be some discrepancies. 2 families, there are 191 parcels. That's 34% of the parcels. 339, that's 60% of the parcels, are single family currently. So this is a mixture of predominantly single family homes with many 2-family homes, about a third, and just a handful of 3 units. And we would be talking about zoning that would enable all of these parcels to go to 3 units. That's a big change in an area that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure to support it. Yeah. Where you're talking about a solution that would require less than 40% open space on all of those parcels.
And those numbers that you referred to, those 565, is that, can you go back to the graph that where you show the columns and it's indicative of the square footage? So is the 565 all of them, all the way down to the smallest parcel?
Yes, so that's all of the parcels. So 47 of those parcels are less than 5,000 square feet.
47 are less than 5,000.
Sorry, 47%.
Oh, 47%. Okay.
So that's what you're seeing on this graph, right? Like visually, you can see that that almost half are below 5,000. So the actual number is 47%.
Okay.
Are below 5,000.
So before we make a decision with you, Teal, maybe it is a good idea to get some public comment if
Yeah, that's
anybody
what I
has
would
been.
like to.
And just before we do that, just as a comment, we only have 7 3-families because our zoning does not allow.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole initiative is to change our zoning.
But again, I think what the larger point is the lot sizes were designed for what's there, whereas in other places, the lot sizes have a little more room for growth. That's what I understood from what Zoe was saying.
Zoe, what is the size? There's 191 2-families. What is the predominant square foot lot size for the 2 families? Do you know that?
That would require a little bit of Excel formula magic that I can't effectively do while multitasking.
Of course,
but I can get you that answer subsequently.
So
But
if
not
you take
live.
one parcel on,
Belvoir?
what was this?
9-11 Belvoir?
Yeah. It's 0.170 acres. And Jim, what did you say the house size? It was 2,800? 2,800
Point what?
2886.
on 0.17 acres.
Okay, that's
What's that?
I mean, that's got to be 5,700 feet, something like that. Try that. 0.17.
0.17 divided by what was your 20?
So 2886.
2886.
That's 0.17 acres is 7,405 square feet.
Wow. Yeah. And that's a 2-family?
It's a 2-family.
Yeah.
And it's to Meredith's point, it's a big
Yeah.
It's a big
there's some large
2-family.
Is it? Yeah. that's a decent sized lot too,
And if you look
right?
at the map around it, I mean,
Yep.
it's typical of all the lot sizes around us.
Right.
Maybe a little bigger, but not by much.
Zoe, that was helpful data. Have you done that same study with the number of parcels on the Elliott Street corridor? Like how many two families, how many single family?
That we ran this analysis, but the geography was different. What we were looking at for the Elliott Street corridor at that time, I can't be sure that it's the same as the geography that we're looking at now. But I do have.
That would be just
the
interesting
same.
too, just to have that for the Elliott
Yeah,
Street.
so again, with the caveat that the geography most likely does not line up with what we're looking at
Right.
for the Elliott Street corridor now, but it is in that general area. So that was looking at 517 parcels, and of that, 82% were single family, 13% were two family, and 1% were three family. So a similar number of three family units across the two areas, but the Elliott Street corridor does have proportionally more single family versus two family, 82 versus 13, whereas for 82% versus 13%, whereas the Blue Hills area that we had studied at the time was 60% single family versus 34% two family. So I think that's the difference that I think all of you intuitively are picking up on between the two fabrics is the difference between a single family fabric that has some two families and a two family fabric that has many single families.
Yeah.
That's what I'm struggling with. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
but I also.
And I think that's valid. It is a real difference. I grew up in a two family neighborhood where everything with the lots were absolutely for that and they fit tightly. And it was great.
Yeah. That's good.
And 3 units on that same parcel would not have felt the same. It would have, that's obviously, that's true everywhere. But they were already maxed out for what was possible to do on those parcels without having, solar shadow impacts that made the open space that was on those parcels less valuable, without having, bulk that wasn't allowable under the zoning envelope. So they were at the limit. They fit well, but you couldn't build them again with our current building code. You couldn't make those units again in that density. And so adding another unit wouldn't just be a function of like fitting it in to what's there. You would have to do it to current code. You'd have to use current dimensions. You have to address, things that were never part of the design of those buildings that make it harder to design that compactly. And I think it would be difficult to achieve the kind of pattern that is working right now while fitting another unit on those parcels.
Great.
Well, I actually think you could do it. It would just be smaller units. Right, instead of having...
Without Matthew here, I can't speak to the details, but I know that many two families that we have currently, you can't build them again that compactly. You can build incredible two families, but it would be a tear down. Something we've talked a lot about, not wanting to do that. When you're that boxed in on the parcel and you have to conform to modern building codes, it is hard to solve for those differences and not tear down the property that you're working with. Having a little bit of extra wiggle room with the parcel area enables you to solve those in more ingenious ways that can still preserve the buildings that are there today that people value and want to maintain.
And as an architect, I would agree with that the building codes, once you start a major renovation, you're required to bring everything up to code, so your stairs get larger, your number of stairs for 3 units, etc. And my thought always was it would be better to do an addition to be able to get a 3rd unit or 2 additional units rather than trying to have to bring the existing building up to code. So It's one of the reasons I always thought it would be better and nicer to be able to do a standalone building and not have to have it be one building with 3 units in it or 2 buildings with 2 units in it each. But that's not the way the zoning allows it to be. But
I mean, if you base this on doing a standalone building, you wouldn't get anything built, right? Like on a 6,000 square foot lot?
Well, that's what, in the Elliott Street corridor, the parcels that are eligible for the zoning rules that we've developed are larger parcels that do have some wiggle room and that have ways of adding units that does not inherently require a tear down. I'm not saying that people won't maybe choose for other reasons, but their hands won't be forced by the building code and the constraints of their parcel. It will be a choice if they pursue a tear down.
But well, what I'm saying is, could you fit a second building on a 6,000 square foot lot?
Probably not, but you could on a 10 or a 15.
But
Yeah,
you could do
I
an
see that.
addition.
Yeah.
You can do an
Yeah.
addition.
You do an addition, yeah.
On
But
these,
the
in the
problem with that is when you do more than 50% of the value of the building, you make an improvement, you have to bring the whole building up to code, right?
well, if you're
So now
doing
you're
multiple,
demoing the inside walls and you're padding everything out to 2x6 so you can get it the R value.
if
for
you're
the new
doing
stretch
it,
code.
if you're doing your addition, let's say it's a separate unit with a firewall in between, it's not the same. So it depends on the configuration that you're going to have, right? So
It's
because
not the same, meaning you don't have to bring the whole rest of the building up to code.
you wouldn't have to, if you're not,
I think it still triggers that.
it depends on how big the building is, et cetera.
Oh, right. If you build a small unit, yeah, okay, I get it.
All right, so this is great. I think we will reconvene on this and we realize our timeline.
Well, I think we
But
do.
I want to hear from the public.
Yeah.
But I just want to, if
I
Zoe's,
agree with you about hearing from the public, but I do think we need to give some direction to what we'd like for UTIL to do, work on in the next week. So,
do we
but
want to
after
look
we
at
hear
this
from the public.
triplex just to
I would
see?
like to look at that triplex.
what it would offset from the Elliott Street.
I suggested it 2 years ago.
So if we could just look at what we would offset in the Elliott Street corridor to do this. We realize there's trade-offs and
Do you want to look at this geography as drawn here? This is, I believe, Maggie, this is the product of the conversation that you had brought up earlier about looking into this area. But I think this, if we want to revisit it, I think we should revisit it with an eye to the specific geography that we want to consider if this is it or not,
right.
and at what densities.
Because I think this included the yoga studio and Brook Road,
So what I would
which
say
we also
is,
wanted to see redeveloped.
is there a way that you see where it says, I think it's the parcels that are to the east of Blue Hills Parkway, I think where the Tucker Elementary School is where the Blue Hills Parkway district ends.
I
So,
believe it comes down to West Street here.
Yeah.
Let me just check that I'm remembering that correctly.
and I know
Yeah,
there's
you
a,
can kind of see it in the imprint here, right? You can see the geometry there, that's where the
went to
current Blue
West.
Hills Parkway corridor district.
Right. Now,
terminates
if
at that
you
location.
go back to that map, there's a lot of neighbor concern, I know, in that neighborhood about the traffic on Oak Street related to the school and safety there. So I would think that anything that you were going to look at would have to be north of there and none of that area south of Oak.
Yeah, so Oak is at Tucker.
And maybe even you do Brook Road, north of Brook Road,
Yeah, so
just
I
that
thought
triangle.
we looked at a smaller, and the biggest one is the old temple, right? That's the temple, Blue Hill Ave, with the 2 big squares.
Correct.
So I think it would be
Well, it's
sort of
Concord
nice.
Baptist now.
Yeah, but sorry, I'm dating myself. I attended 2nd grade there when the Tucker was being renovated. But so I would agree on losing some parcels on Blue Hill Parkway.
Well, what do you think about using Brook Road as the divider?
Brook Road North. I mean, I think that would be good. It's a shame we can't go street by street based on lot size until we get to what we're looking for,
Right.
which we're looking for just what, 200 units
200
off of
units.
Elliott Street? Is that what we're looking for here?
185 to 200.
185 off of Elliott Street is why we're doing this. So if you could go street by, I know it's an impossible ask for Zoe, but if we go street by street until we get there, because it looks like the northern parcels are way bigger than the southern parcels in this giant triangle.
I've also wondered about expanding the Parkway District to pick up Laurel Road and West Street, that area to the east of the Parkway. Maybe that's an alternative to doing, but those are small parcels too, I imagine, Zoe.
So this would be, option one would be this like triangle here. And option two would be as its own district with its own rules, and an option two would be this area as an expansion to the rule set that we already have for the Blue Hills Parkway. Am I
Right.
understanding that correctly?
Right. And then I still think we should have the option with the Fairmount Station.
Yeah, I wouldn't pursue Fairmount personally, no offense, but I just don't think it's makes sense to go pushing into yet another neighborhood that's untouched.
I wasn't supporting this, so we'll go with what we each other don't support.
All right.
Zoe,
As long as it's on
so
the record.
when you're, if you were to include all of this or most of this, I'm wondering if you could offset that with the Elliott Street corridor, bringing the western, or if you're looking at Elliott Street above where you had blacked out on the 10% adjacent community plan, if you could exclude those parcels, which would be north. No, I'm looking at the north of Elliott Street.
But you have the Capon Street Station there.
I know, but it's all single family.
No, there's 2 families on Capon.
Not maybe 1 or 2. I wrote that too just to confirm. But
But
all of the
driving it
Cliff
is not
neighborhood.
necessarily the best
if
thing
you want to
for-
leave in Capon Street, but I think, yeah, everything. If you can look at what you blacked out, just out of curiosity, keeping just the first row of homes along Elliott Street. If that area, that triplex area, offsets that. And even maybe that other that area that was blackened along Elliott Street.
That's a lot of area.
But so is that. I just don't know if that's going to work. Yeah. So I don't know how much of that you could swap out with the Blue Hills triplex, but I just would be curious to see how that might.
Okay, so basically, so we talked about 2 different geographies in the Blue Hills area, and then the intent would be to see if that would be enough to allow a reduction in the Elliott Street corridor that aligns with this map.
Correct. As an analysis.
No, I don't agree with that. I think you need to leave this is too much. You're going to be shifting way too much
Well,
over.
maybe we don't. But
Yeah, not this map. This isn't the one. Go back to the one. I think the target
maybe
is
just at least part of it, or at least the top area, maybe not the bottom.
You're
that you were
removing-
swapped.
Yeah, I don't think you want to remove anything near the Central Ave area.
No, it's not Central Ave. It's Elliott Street. It would be Norway.
Norway Cliff.
Meredith, you want to remove this.
Yes, Norway Cliff,
Well, maybe not all that.
Allen Circle.
Oh, Allen Circle also? Okay.
I don't.
Just I'm
You have
curious.
one of the trolley stations here. You're removing the entire catchment area of that trolley station.
So I guess that's where the struggle is. Elliott Street is, people are saying, please take pressure off Elliott Street. So Meredith is suggesting to take pressure off Elliott Street. And
But it's-
now,
And I think it
It's
just.
a walkable
Yeah.
section of Elliott Street.
so that's why it's.
not
I
listen to them,
think this
right?
is
You
just
have to look
an
at it.
uncharacter. I think this
There are
is
peeps.
an entire Cliff neighborhood that would be altered significantly.
Well, maybe you take it over to, I don't think it should peel off as far to the right.
So the lower areas that you were trying to take off are more, those do have characteristics, that's where the two families are.
There are singles in there too.
There are
Yeah,
singles in there too. But
I don't know why. I'm with you on that one. The Valley Road, Avalon. I would leave that in there. I don't know why.
we
That's
leave,
the
yeah,
slot
leave
here.
Valley Road and Avalon in, but take out the Norway
sense.
Cliff, Avalon, or Allen Circle.
Just so I'm clear, that the reason
If I
that I'm
could.
hearing to
Yeah.
take this area out is because currently it has larger lot single family.
Correct.
Okay.
And all single family, yeah, but more, I would be concerned about, yeah.
I think I understand that it might be a more dramatic change. And I think if there's any single family in Milton that makes sense to be considered for additional units that are sensitive, that are contextual, this is a place that makes sense for that because it has a premium transit access to multiple stations. So I hear you on this
Yeah.
being a geography, but I
understand.
yeah, I think I realize that the committee is, the board is divided on whether you want to see a level of housing production coming out of this. And I think that the homeowners in these locations, if that's also part of the concern, that there are, homeowners that may not want to have multifamily. I think this area has valid planning reasons why that should be an option for those owners, and they don't need to act on it. If they value their single family as it is, they don't need to actualize that potential.
Yeah, but
The
those are,
issue is-
those are all pretty big lots, and I think if you take those out, it will help the density denominator. I mean, a lot of them, especially around Cliff, are very big.
I just, as an exercise, if we could just take a look at it, I think it would be worthwhile.
What geography is it? Do we want it to be? Is it a tighter one here? I heard some folks saying that, or is it this whole area?
I think the tighter one. I
So
think
keep
I
Cape
think
and Street,
that
you want to keep Cape and Valley.
I think I'm going to go.
I keep Cape and Valley, I think.
I'm going to.
We did get a letter from a Cape and Street resident who was concerned.
I'm going to, come back to the ones that have larger lots are more able to take an addition, and the ones that are smaller. If you make everything the smaller lots, you're going to incentivize tear downs, and so just be mindful of that because you're, just like Zoe said, you have a lot less flexibility in how you're going to be able to do the units because if you're hemmed in. And on something where you have a little more land, you actually have more options. And so those could be added more sensitively. You could take a look at the architecture and see the best place to add it. But when you're hemmed in, you have you're tight, you only have one option for how you can do it, then you may not like the architectural result that you get out of it. So by trying to take out all of the parcels that have more flexibility, I think it's a mistake.
But you also have to consider that assemblage is possible as well. And you could have multiple large lots taken out and
You're still going to have a limit to what you can put on a larger lot unless you have a way
But
to
they can be
subdivide
some-
it. I just don't.
it just has the potential, I think, to
Yeah, I would look at Norway Cliff and then the cul-de-sac there. Heading-
To
Allen
be clear,
Circle.
the rules for Elliott Street corridor would not be advantageous for lot assembly, especially for the large lots, because you would not get any more units. By merging lots, you would reduce the unit capacity of each lot because you would be limited to 4 units, regardless of the lot size you have. So if you increase the lot size, you can still only produce 4 units. The number
how
of units is
many
going to be the biggest driver.
And how many ADUs can be added?
One per lot.
One per lot?
So again, merging would be a disadvantage. You would get 1 unit.
Yeah.
If you kept the lot separate, you could fit 4 units on each lot under this zoning, and that I don't yet know the details of how this would interact with the ADU ordinance that you have put forward, but let's say it's 1 unit per lot, that would mean each of them can carry 5 units, 4 units under this zoning and the 5th ADU, if that's how it works. If you merge those 2 lots, you can produce 5 total. So you go from 10 across 2 lots to 5 on 1 lot. So it will not be economically advantageous to merge large lots. It will potentially be economically advantageous to merge small lots that do not get you to the 3 units. So that would be an argument for focusing on large lots.
But it might, to Jim's point, affect the density denominator because of
It will.
the land
Yes,
area.
that
Definitely will.
is true. These larger lots are the 2 things that are hurting your density in Elliott Street are lots that are below the minimum lot size and lots that are well above the density of 4 units per lot that would be advantageous. So you're correct that reducing large lots would help with the density numbers.
But you're
If we're
also,
focusing specifically on large lots.
reducing the zone capacity. So like right now, the amount of zone capacity that you're going to get for a larger land area could be less, right? And now will we have the right amount of minimum land area within the half mile? I guess is another question, but.
Well, we'll look at it for next week. No one's making a final decision
We'll look
right
at
now.
it.
So
I'm gonna do a final, I think the last drawing that I had of this was this area being eliminated. Hold on, it'll come up in a second.
No, I think you leave in
Is
Capon
that-
Street and you just go south of the T.
So just clear that. This
Yeah.
here, and then would you
yeah,
grab just that side?
yes, and up, yeah.
Or you could
And,
leave everything on Capon Street if you wanted to. I know I'm making it a little small, but it looks,
Like
I would,
carving these
Leave
ones.
both
Keep
sides.
those.
so that's just me speaking. It's not the whole board. That's just me.
I agree
hard
with
to
you,
see.
Jim.
So leave both sides of Capon Street, and then everything.
Everything to the south and west of Capon
Right,
that is not fronting Elliott gets removed.
right.
Okay.
And above, up to the.
So
I can't tell what road that
I'll do
crosses
this in
over.
a color that maybe will come
Yeah.
through better. Let me clear this.
On the other side of the tracks. Yep.
Well,
So
to the
that's
T
not-
tracks,
No,
right to the.
No,
why wouldn't you
up above.
stop it at, why are you going and removing up above?
Okay, so this is what I
I guess we
Just
wouldn't have to,
saw.
yeah. Just in that area then, that's fine.
is this. I'm sorry, I know these colors are.
That's good.
not,
That's good.
Yeah. I don't think that's going to be 185 to 200 units, but we'll see.
Well, could we look at Milton Village again? I'm just thinking the Verizon building. Put a little more over there.
We don't have the Verizon building in.
So we should probably put that in, right? That's a huge opportunity.
Then that's going into that whole,
The overlay
Milton Village.
district.
Okay,
single,
I get it. You're
I don't
saying.
thi- yeah.
That's like.
All right,
low-hanging
I'm
fruit.
just thinking if we can offset and we'll see with the triplex, it might not work, it might not make sense, but.
Okay, so I think I have my margin search. I have the swap that we've already shown, which is removing this area near the, that's the, go back 1 second to that drawing. So we have a version of reducing the Elliott Street border that is removing this geography. We have a version of reducing the Elliott Street corridor that's removing the geography we just talked about along Cliff Road, Norway Road. And we have 2 areas in the Blue Hills area that we're going to look at as potential additions, and we're seeing those as swaps. So that would be like I guess there's like something like 6 variations of
And-
combinations of those two things.
Tweaks.
And,
those,
and the
yeah.
Fairmount.
Yes, we have the Fairmount. So the basically we'd have these two Elliott Street options and then 3 options for what gets swapped in for one or other of those two.
Okay.
So that's a total of 6 options that we'd be showing of different combinations.
That's great.
And then do we have any interest in looking at our institutions for different districts, or is that just crazy at this point? Like Milton Academy or Curry College or anything like that, since the guidelines have been changed?
I
I don't,
It's okay, I'm just throwing it
I
out
don't,
there.
yeah.
I get it, I'm just,
I think, well, I can't say, but the Milton Academy land area is so large. I think it would be like a fuller village.
Yeah, but you
Well, it wouldn't-
wouldn't have
and I
to do
wouldn't-
the
I wouldn't.
whole, you wouldn't have to do the whole Milton Academy land area.
right across the street from
I
me
just
is
think
is a great parcel that goes
Yeah.
down to Brook Road, and that also abuts their 9 units of sort of
It's a huge
future
thing.
housing. I'd be willing to put it in my backyard. I mean, I would no problem putting it right there. Just saying, when the torture we're putting ourselves through and all the residents through
I
now,
know.
with this, you might want to look at that. Or 501 Randolph Ave is a great parcel, owned by Milton Academy, which is this vacant house ripe for a tear down. It's on, I think, 4 or 5, it's on 5 or 6 acres.
Yeah, that had a fire in it.
What
Right,
do you?
just-
Actually, you know what? That's actually a very good point. The 501. If we were going to do anything, they have a demolition application in,
8.24
and I don't know what they're going to do with it, but
That are going to be administration.
or dorm
Is it
housing.
Where's
501?
It's 501.
Across from
It's a
Gun
very
Hill.
historic old home.
Had a fire.
Had a fire.
Across from Gun. Okay, sure,
Yeah.
sure. It's after the
Right,
fields, right?
yeah,
You go
yeah,
past
right
the fields
there.
it's the
Right
next
It does
parcel.
have some
Down and up.
acreage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And to Jim's point,
that's
along,
8 acres.
along,
8.24.
yeah, along Brook Road, it's already multifamily for their
just-
housing.
It's really too bad.
Dorms.
There's a tremendous amount of history.
Well, that opens up a whole new
Yeah,
one.
but it's being torn down. So
501.
that would be the one lot that I would say
501's being torn down.
that would be the one. If that could help us in some way,
They changed those guidelines for a reason. You
That's
might as well
worth
take
looking
advantage
at
of
it.
it.
I would look at that lot.
I'd look at that 501,
Yeah, so
especially if
would
it's
I.
8
So
acres.
Zoe, can you look at that? 501 Randolph Ave?
Let me just pull it up. And that would be as another alternative to swap in for a reduction in Elliott Street. That's the goal.
Or just see what can we put
Or-
there? Just see how many units we can put there.
And a reduction for the ones at, up on 728 Randolph Ave.
You're talking about swap or reduction?
Well, reduction, there's already 40 there.
Yeah, just a reduction.
So a reduction,
We're looking for
to
20 at
80.
least, right?
yeah, so there's.
get to 80.
To get to 80 total,
Yeah, we're at 102.
no more than 80.
And how many units would you be comfortable with showing on the 501 Randolph Ave site?
I don't know.
You have to do at least 15 units an
Yeah.
acre there. to
Yeah.
not
15
affect
times
it.
8.
Yeah,
Yeah, 120 is what it would be, the math, right?
It's how many acres?
8.
8.24. I drive by it all the time.
So 8.24, yeah.
yeah.
That's a 123.6 of just direct multiplication of the 8.24 times 15. So that, I think if you're not comfortable with it at that number of units, I don't think it's
123.
helping us.
123. I think we would.
I don't have a problem with it. But
Is that a Milton Academy permit to tear it down?
Yeah, they have a demo, and the 2 years is they applied 2 years ago for
it's
it.
an old mansion. It would cost hundreds of
So
thousands.
I guess
to
the
restore.
question becomes what is what 120 units is it replacing, right? I mean, it could replace the 120 units in the Elliott Street corridor
Which I would
without
like to
any
see,
of the
yeah.
other, without any of the other changes we've talked about.
It might.
Except for those two small swap outs in the Elliott Street corner. It
Or
wouldn't.
100 off of Elliott Street and 20 off of Randolph Ave.
In which case, I still think we need possibly more than 100 off of the Elliott Street corridor, maybe a small portion of the Parkway or that area around the
Parkway
Blue
would
Hill
get
Parkway,
The smaller.
the Parkway's expansion.
I mean, so 348 Center Street is right across the street from me. It's 3.6 acres. And then 336 Center.
Let's just keep it at the Randolph Ave and not do too many more, I
Okay.
think.
Whatever you want to do.
If we,
I'm just thinking time-wise, it's all, I'm just thinking,
I mean, are we
I
going
mean,
for
they can
time or
do-
are we going for the best plan for Milton? You know, nobody
I
likes
know.
2461. This
You
whole
run
thing
out of time.
stinks.
Yeah.
I mean,
please run out of
it's
time.
either you're going to
You know
try
what?
and get an
Let's see
article
what
at
it
the
looks
town
like,
meeting,
yeah.
or you're not. If town meeting is not the goal, then we have tons of time, but town meeting is your only chance to meet the state's requirements.
all right,
Is it a big lift though when we take like an 8 acre parcel and just apply it? Doesn't feel like it is.
A big lift in terms of like the analysis we'd have to do?
Yeah.
No, that's totally doable. I'm just saying, big picture, either we're accepting this timeline or we're not. And either we're working within it or we're not. There isn't.
Well, I think
The
we
only
are.
way that
Zoe,
you have
Zoe,
more time
before
is
you
if we're not.
before you go on, Zoe, I think we know the timeline. We're going to work within it, and we might be asking more of you, Teal, than is fair. But I'm just curious, what were you asking, Jim? In addition to 501, what was your other ask?
off Brook Road.
348 Center Street, right across the street from my house, which goes down to Brook Road.
Is it a single parcel?
It is a single parcel.
So it's a large.
Well, no, I think I had a hard time finding the address. No, 348 Center is a single parcel, and then 336 Center starts on Center and goes down to Brook and picks up about 9 units of Milton Academy administrative housing or something. It's those contemporary looking.
Yeah.
So that's another 6 acres. Now this might be too much, but that's 2 parcels that we could put together and not worry about the spot zoning issue with just 1 parcel. And see what happens there too. It's way close. It's right across from Fompon. There's a bus station right on the corner of Center and Brook. I mean, with us being able to look at institutions now, it's to me it's a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got these new guidelines last week. So to say we're out of time is okay. We're out of time on guidelines that make huge changes for Milton that we just got a week ago.
But we might not need it because we need the contiguity up here in the land area up here, so we can't take too much off. But
we're doing a whole.
I like the idea where you have a building that's being demolished, Jim, as compared to these other locations. So.
Well, these might not be demolished. I mean, there's tons of land on these parcels.
I see.
Well, especially if they're going to be able to add to some of their housing, like along Brook Road.
It's a perfect spot for it.
I think that's a good spot for some expansion.
But I think 15 units per acre that seems very dense.
I know, no, it's
to
a
me
lot.
in
I'm
that
not saying
area.
it's perfect. It's a lot.
Yeah, I would.
To be just one note on the institutional land, it's similar to the public land. So right now, it isn't a given that it is admissible as developable. If you can demonstrate that there is an intention, to bring it to, market available housing production. So not just like institutional housing for that institution, but housing that is publicly available to the market. Then you can override the fact that institutional land is basically excluded.
So we might not be able to use it then.
It's not like a given that it is admissible. It still has the same level of scrutiny that, for instance, Granite Ave South had.
So
how are you expected to demonstrate that? You need a letter from the Milton Academy folks?
So because we haven't yet had a client that is looking into this particular parameter, I haven't done extensive research on it, but to provide an example for the Granite Ave South, some of the options you have to make it admissible were having it being in a housing production plan. so already designated as a place that the town had identified as a site for future housing production, or have the owner of the land demonstrate their intentions, their plans to bring it to dispose of it for public use for housing.
So
But that was the old guidelines. I thought they changed the guidelines. That's always been in place. What
Previously,
you
there
just
was
said has
no
always been
way
in
to
place.
override the institutional one. So there was a bypass opportunity for publicly owned land to demonstrate in this way that it was in fact intended to be used for future housing production. There was not a similar option made available for institutional land. So the revision extended a similar level of discretion to be able to demonstrate that institutional land was in fact intended for future market housing.
I see. Okay.
Would it be helpful to demonstrate that the institutional land, the housing that they're producing, the children who live in those housing would be attending Milton Public Schools? It's different.
I don't believe so,
Than
but I
it would
haven't.
be, say, like Fontbonne Academy. I understand maybe the hesitant to zone for HLC to accept Fontbonne because there's no housing there. Kids aren't going to be there. But at Milton Academy, the housing actually has kids in it who the Milton Public School System educates.
But they don't know what they're going to do with it yet. So it could be dorms, housing students
Could be
who,
dorms, could be administrative, might not be housing.
you think it's, I haven't heard. It's up to, I think
That's
the
frustrating.
trustees have to decide, but, all right, so maybe we should not look at that then.
Yeah, don't waste the time.
Yeah, if I don't think that would be likely to be approved. But it was a good thought.
Sorry, guys.
It was a good thought.
Let
a
you down a
good
path.
suggestion.
Dead end. All right.
Okay, we're back to where we were with those last 6 tweaks.
So I think with just the addition was 501 Randolph Ave. That was, if I remember correctly, that is not institutional land, or it is institutional land?
It is.
It is.
You don't want to keep that? You don't want to look at that?
I mean, we could try for it. I mean, I
Yeah, I
guess.
think we should try.
Yeah.
All right, keep
Just that one.
Just
You know.
that one, the 501. We can, see if it's,
You know,
Permissible.
their parameters have become so restrictive on Milton, they have to accept they got to give a little bit of relief. You know, we got relief down at 2 Granite Ave. You know, maybe we can get some relief up there. Okay. I think we have to try it. It might allow us to take some pressure off some of the neighborhoods that already are being asked to have too much zoned into them.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Worth pursuing.
All right, so we'll keep 501 in and the other 6 tweaks. And that will be very helpful for our meeting on the 30th.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I think with that, I can, if it's helpful, I can stay for public comment.
That's
also-
great. Thank you, Zoe. That's good. If there's anyone who would like to speak from the public here, or if there's anyone, Cheyenne, if anyone raises their hand on Zoom.
I don't see anyone on Zoom.
Okay. All right. So I think we're good for tonight,
Someone in
Zoe.
the room?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. Yes. If you can just come to the microphone. Yeah. And state your name and for the record.
Just take a second.
Yes.
Tom Doherty, Milton resident. I came to make some comment as it relates to the 10%.
Okay.
Not what's been discussed
That's
tonight.
fine.
So I could do that some other time if that's better for the planning board.
I think the sooner we hear any comment, Meredith, the
Yeah, I
better
think
off we
that's,
are.
yeah.
All right. So let me just provide this. Hold on a second. This is a copy of what I sent to you. This is April 21, 2025. Each one of you, I emailed this to you. It's 2 pages. The first page is the fully compliant, applicable adjacent commuter rail station proximity-based multifamily zoning plan that provides 10% multifamily zoning capacity as requested in terms of that kind of capacity and that kind of plan as requested, as I understand it, by select board. So I'd like to provide this copy so that it's a matter of record for
Great.
this meeting. I provided it to you 7 or so days in advance so that you might each have an opportunity to
Yeah.
look at it if you choose, so that I could come tonight and ask that, I would put this in the record and I'll give you a very short summary of the relationship.
Yeah, great.
Hey, Meredith.
Yes.
I have a question. So it is 10:30 and we still do have, to talk a little bit about the zoning language. We want to get rid of next week and the executive session minutes.
Right,
So
we have to go to-
We're gonna, do like a little timer to try and get out before
Yes.
11.
Yes.
Oh, this isn't going to take,
This will be,
from my perspective, this will take a few minutes
Great.
only because the purpose of providing it was that way the planning board would have a bit of a look at it in advance opportunity. And what it does is a fully compliant adjacent community plan that essentially looks at a couple of aspects. One is the commuter rail station-based plan with Blue Hills corridor, unit capacity 235 units on 16.6 acres. Mattapan Station, unit capacity 183 units on 5.1 acres. So therefore, that total is 418 units. And as we know, 15 units per acre for the 37.5 acres leads to 563 units. So consequently, a plan that is predicated on the adjacency to the commuter rail and those adjacent acres then would require some capacity elsewhere. And what this does is then look at the regulations, 72081A, 0% must be located within 5.5 miles. If the, and as Milton has, less than 100 acres of developable land within a half mile of commuter rail stations. Consequently, there is the opportunity to provide additional units. And I have an extra, thing.
Oh,
Sorry.
my computer died.
There's the opportunity. And so what I did was to look therefore both at Section 3A's 563 unit capacity and Milton's total 10%. That would be 985 units capacity goal. And that could be accomplished by adding, and of course you spent hours and hours on this, and so I'm just using one sort of element. Elliott Street corridor tier 1, 485 units, 47 acres. And I thought it'd be worth looking at the paper mill site, recognizing, as it says below, that that would itself require a negotiation with the state concerning it, right? Or alternative to the Elliott Street corridor tier 1, you could be looking as has been mentioned, 711 Randolph Ave, 2 Granite Ave, some aspects like that. So that's really the nub of it. That would then, one way or another, come to 1,059 units, which would be more than the required number for an adjacent community-based plan. So that's the point of it, to sort of get that out there so that your expert and your own capabilities would, have that to look at.
Great. And I will, Cheyenne, we can add this. I can send you a copy of this so you have it or to add to post and add to the public record.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thank you.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
So the plan that was presented tonight, the 10% plan based on the adjacent community, was actually 187 units at the Blue Hills corridor, and then Mattapan Station was still 183, which gets us to 370. That's still okay, right? Because it's still more than half the units, and then we can make up the rest of it somewhere
Right.
else. If we slightly tweak this,
Yes.
it's okay.
Yes.
All right.
That's my understanding, and obviously, UTL can double check that, but that's right. And then Elliott Street, you would then vary it as you
Yeah.
have been talking about.
Good enough. Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a hand raised on Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay.
Hi, it's Kathleen O'Donnell, Precinct 7, 12 Belcher Circle.
Welcome. welcome Kathleen.
And I just had a question about why we would be sending one residence plan to UTIL but not other residence plans. I understand Brian Furs, who's a former member of the planning board, submitted some details about changing the plan, and I just sort of wonder why one person's got picked and not another. Why wouldn't we be sending everything?
This was regarding a 10% plan, that it was just something that we could analyze and evaluate, but it was not that, it was part of, what we were looking at anyway as an adjacent plan. So it didn't really differ that much. It was just sort of an alternative to what we already had.
Thank you. But I have another follow-up question, which is that I understand that this title on this thing says that it's fully compliant, but we don't know that. I know that there has been the ability to ask HLC to sort of weigh in on proposals. So is there a plan to send a non-compliant 10% plan to HLC to see if they're going to buy it? I mean, it's kind of like wondering why we would be spending town money and, UTIL's time on something that we know won't fly at all with HLC.
Well, it's something the select board asked us to study, and we may, once we have a plan, submit it and for review to see what the comments from HLC.
I just don't understand why we would be spending asking UTIL to spend, all this time and effort on looking at a plan that we don't know that it's ever going to work.
We don't know.
Well, as I had said recently, we're looking at every alternative, and until we either have a plan that's submitted, we should look at every alternative. And UTIL works for us, and they've done a great job of looking at anything we've asked them to do. So
I'm not questioning the work that UTIL has done, and I appreciate the fact that you're investigating all of this. I'm just sensitive to the fact that we have no time left.
Your sensitivity is understood. Thank you.
So I also.
Sean, I didn't mean to be cut off like that. Sorry.
And I'm being quite sincere. We understand your sensitivity. We have it too.
Thank you.
So I'd like to build off of the question Brian raised earlier and Kathleen just reminded us about, is that Brian first sent a plan, a map. We haven't discussed it, and we've discussed other people's suggestions, other residents' suggestions. And so I think we should discuss that map, and it's getting late now. But I think we should discuss it at our meeting next week.
I would be happy to do that.
And we should send that map to Zoe to look at, not necessarily to study, but to have an idea what it is, and maybe if she's got any immediate reactions to it.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that.
Who has that map?
I sent it to everyone
all do.
on
I
the
missed
board.
it.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at
It was
it.
sent about a month ago.
We'll resend it.
Great.
Yep.
I missed it.
I would be happy to do that, and meant no disrespect to Brian. So I would be absolutely happy to do that, include that. All right.
I have a question. I know that on the 30th, we're having Zoe and Matthew come back. Are we going to have a final plan to get done? Because we did mention we needed to do the zoning language, and the week after that's going to be town meeting, and with people in and out of the office, we kind of have to consider
we have
other
to
workloads.
Absolutely. And that's why I think that meeting on the 8th may be necessary.
So do we need to ask whether UTIL can attend the meeting on the 8th?
Could you tentatively keep the 8th open, Zoe,
Take a look
to join us? That would be the next meeting following our town meeting.
I'm seeing a potential conflict for Matthew. I should be able to join. I will just say that at that point, I think as Cheyenne was pointing out, they do need some time to draft the zoning. So I think there's kind of a handoff that happens there between our team and the town staff to finish out the writing of the zoning. And so while I'm happy to come on the 8th, I do think that if we are still considering analysis on the 8th, that requires my participation, that does give the town staff very limited amount of time to get to a full article and go through any necessary review cycles.
Okay.
I guess I was just thinking, we've asked for a lot of things to be studied for next week. And whether there's any kind of follow-up, sort of final follow-up that needs to happen from that. But it's understood in terms of the time frame.
Yeah, we'll hold it, and I just would urge us all to try to get to an answer on the 30th so that town staff has some time with the zoning.
Yeah.
So I have a question just from a process. So it's zoning, of course, is all legal language. So does Peter Mello have a hand in writing it to help take the load off of town staff?
That would
you
be a
two
question.
just write it. I'm sorry.
No, Nick, we have a template for that zoning language. What I would ask for everybody to do is to look over that template, because the question is, our site plan, there's a site plan portion embedded in that, and there's also design guidelines. The design guidelines I think should definitely stay, what we had in there previously in the 2023. But the question is, do we want to break out the site plan separate? And I think for now we should keep it in, because we don't know that our site plan approval is going to be finalized at May town meeting. We're expecting that it would be, but in the event it isn't, I think we should keep the site plan language in as is. But everyone should look it over, and
I think the site
that's
plan,
the biggest thing.
I agree with you, but I think that if site plan approval bylaw passes, then we definitely need to pull it out. It would be definitely too confusing.
Yeah. So I think, and we will know that in advance of that
Right.
May 16th deadline. So that, just to be thinking about that, that's, I think what Nick was wanting us to think about. But other than that, it's sort of plugging in the districts and the
parameters.
And the parameters.
And Zoe, who would be producing the map that would need to accompany, or the maps that would need to accompany the zoning?
I believe that would be us. We produced it for the 2023 plan.
Okay.
So we would, it's maps that we've been showing, but we sort of add the, formal sort of title and legend that would be required for it to serve in that function.
I've had somebody ask, or a couple of people ask, how do I know if my property's in or not in one of these districts? So will we have a parcel list so people can see as we narrow down, or as we at least the final, what we decide on to submit?
Yeah, that's easy enough for us to generate. It's already embedded in for the compliance modeling that we have to do for each district. Requires us listing out all of the parcels that are included in each of those districts. So it'd be easy enough to generate once all of the districts have stabilized.
Do they list by parcel number, Zoe, or by parcel number and street address?
They include street address.
Good.
So it should be searchable for folks that are looking for a property in the way that they tend to interact with their property rather than as a parcel number.
Exactly. That's exactly why I asked. Thank you.
Great. All right. I think that's it. So now we'll now be going into an executive session. So I think we're good on this, and we'll see everybody on the 30th.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you, Zoe.
And you can say, this should be very brief, 5 minutes. We're going into an executive session. So if you could disconnect.
We have to make a motion to do that, right?
Yes. So yes, I will now, before we do, thank you. I will now make a motion to go into executive session for approval of executive session minutes for the dates of March 13th and March 27th. Thank you. Good evening.